He did everything just to feed his messed-up obsession. Jiangshan grabbed a water bottle and acted like he needed a refill, using that as his reason to head into the girls' dorm. The girls headed off to shower. He slipped into the water room next door and kept quiet, watching everything from his hiding spot. He didn't show up to spy on anyone while they were bathing. He waited, keeping an eye out for whoever was actually spying. Back when he was alive before, something terrible had happened at this school. That night, someone sneaked into the bathhouse, lurking where they shouldn't be. When the students spotted him, he took off, heart pounding as he tried to get away as fast as he could. Jiangshan once had a moment where he could have changed how things turned out. Back then, all he could do was freeze up, heart pounding in his chest. Fear took over everything else. The man burst into the girl's bathroom, catching one girl alone while she was taking a bath. With no time for her to react, he attacked her, leaving her lifeless in the water. Nobody really remembered what happened for long. It just faded away, like old news that gets buried under a bunch of new stuff. It turned into something Jiangshan could never forget, haunting him long after it happened. He ended up not finishing school. Instead, he left and joined the army. After he joined the special forces, he kept getting in trouble for not following the rules. But deep down, he was still mad. That anger just wouldn't go away no matter what he tried. He just didn't get it. It didn't make sense to him how those monsters who messed up other people's lives could just walk around like nothing happened. As time went on, everyone started to know him as the Lone Wolf. During a raid on a crime syndicate, he found out his own teammates had turned against him. The whole squad didn't make it. Even he got taken out by someone he thought was on his side, a traitor who stabbed him when he least expected it. Even though he didn't want to, something gave him another shot. Suddenly, he found himself living his life again, but this time it was 10 years earlier. Jiangshan just stood there, not moving, his mind totally blank. Someone nearby noticed him acting weird and checked if he was all right. Without thinking, Jiangshan quickly said he wasn't some creep or anything. He tried to explain himself, saying he wasn't spying on anyone in the bathroom. He just thought it was strange how the other guy had been standing still for so long. The boy didn't even hesitate to answer. He looked right at the other person, kind of annoyed, and made it clear he was a student too. There was no doubt about it. He just said it like it was totally obvious. Jiangshan gripped his friend's shoulder and stared him down, wanting to know exactly what day it was. It was April 13th, 2015. He thought about heading over to the counseling office, not really sure what else to do. The boy with glasses glanced at Jiangshan in a way that made things awkward for a second, then headed out of the restroom with the rest of his friends. Jiangshan looked at himself in the mirror, not really sure what to think. His eyes just stayed on his own face like he was trying to figure something out but couldn't find the answer. He stared ahead, eyes wide, barely able to believe what was happening. Somehow, he'd actually made it back. He gave himself a sharp slap on the cheek. He felt a sudden sting, and that was it. Everything happening was real. He knew he was still standing, and that meant the other guys were in serious trouble. A group of girls strolled over from across the way, holding hands and laughing as they talked about the latest celebrity gossip from a variety show. Jiangshan heard the noise and glanced over his shoulder to see what was going on. A blonde girl glared at him, clearly annoyed. She didn't hold back, calling him out for staring. It was obvious she didn't think he was good-looking, and she even brought up Jackie, making it clear he wasn't part of their conversation. The way he stood near the restroom door, nose bleeding and mumbling to himself, just made things weirder. She rolled her eyes, ready to drop the whole thing, and told her friends they should just head to the showers. He watched them walk away. Then it hit him. Today was April 13th. He remembered that something really bad had happened on this exact day. He knew that if things were ever going to change, this was the moment it had to start. He grabbed his water kettle and walked straight into the girls' dorm, not even hesitating. He looked over at the windows, checking them out, but everything seemed totally normal. He stood at the doorway, hoping to grab some water since the teaching building's supply had been cut off again. He got cut off again. This school really sucked. He kept his eyes forward, not wanting to look around and draw any attention. Jiangshan stood in the water room, filling up his kettle. He glanced at the clock every few seconds, making sure he wasn't running late. 10 years ago, this was the spot where he couldn't save a girl. That memory stuck with him, never really fading, no matter how much time passed. He wasn't going to mess things up again. This time, he wanted to fix what went wrong before and prove to himself he could do better. Out of nowhere, a loud scream cut through the hallway. Someone was yelling for help because a guy was spying on the girls in the shower. The whole place froze for a second, everyone trying to figure out what just happened. Jiangshan heard the noise and didn't waste a second. He spun around and took off, running straight for where the sound had come from. A group of girls started yelling at a guy, telling everyone to stop him from escaping. As soon as he heard them, the guy got really mad. A moment later, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a knife. The guys around him froze, realizing he wasn't messing around. He held the knife low, making it clear he wanted everyone to back off. Nobody wanted trouble, so they started stepping away, not wanting to push their luck. Zhongshan grabbed his kettle in a hurry. He grabbed whatever was nearby and chucked it right at the guy. The kettle crashed into his head with a sharp sound, sending hot water splattering over his face. The man let out a sharp yell, clutching his side as pain shot through him. His eyes darted around, searching for whoever had attacked him. Anger burned in his expression. He looked like he was ready to fight back, no matter who was behind it. Before he could finish, Jiangshan was already sprinting ahead. He launched a hard kick right at the side of the guy's head. The man lost his balance and stumbled backwards, his feet scrambling for grip. He couldn't catch himself in time and ended up falling hard onto the ground. He got back on his feet right away. He started slashing the knife at Jiangshan, not caring where it landed. Jiangshan moved out of the way like it was no big deal. He grabbed the guy's wrist and twisted it, making him drop the knife. The blade hit the floor with a loud clatter, and the guy winced from the pain. Jiangshan lifts his leg up, getting ready for his next move. He landed another hard kick right to the guy's head. The man dropped to the ground, totally out cold. Zhongshan just kept going, not holding back at all. Every punch landed hard, years of frustration and anger fueling him. He hit the guy over and over, all that old stuff he'd bottled up finally coming out. A few moments later, the guy's front teeth were busted, his nose looked crushed, and his face was so swollen he barely looked human anymore. The man, blood dripping from his busted mouth, could barely get his words out. He looked desperate and scared as he tried to get his classmate to stop, like he couldn't take another hit. Jiangshan started to cool off, his anger fading as he took a few breaths. Right then, someone with a quiet, gentle voice started to speak. Zhongshan glanced up and stopped in his tracks. Standing there was the same girl he remembered from before, the one who died in his last life. Her face turned red and she looked down, clearly embarrassed. She knew he was just trying to be brave, but the way he kept looking at her made her feel awkward. It was almost too much, and she wished he would stop staring so much. Zhongshan felt something shift inside him when she spoke. A few minutes later, the cops pulled up and took the guy straight to their car. Most guys couldn't believe someone like him took down an armed criminal with just his bare hands. It wasn't just luck either. He used a move that looked pretty legit, like he knew what he was doing. You could tell he practiced that kind of stuff before. Zhongshan stayed cool, saying he'd seen those moves on TV and just thought they looked cool. He made it sound like it was nothing special, just something he picked up by watching. Most scouts never pick up skills like these, no matter how long they've been around. Somehow, he picked them up just by watching TV. Now, looking at what's happening, it's hard to believe TV could teach someone how to handle this kind of mess too. The officer didn't waste any time. Out of nowhere, he rushed straight at Zhongshan, catching everyone off guard. Zhongshan stood his ground. He looked straight at the officer, eyes cold and steady, not backing down for a second. The officer stood completely still, sweat running down his face. He could sense something intense coming from the kid, like the air itself got heavier. It made him pause and really look at the kid, wondering what kind of person could give off that vibe. Jiangshan stared at the officer, his face calm but serious. He watched how the officer handled things, not looking scared or nervous, just quietly pointing out that what the officer was doing wasn't right. He kept his cool, standing his ground even though things were getting tense. The girl who'd just been rescued reached out and grabbed the officer's sleeve. She didn't look scared anymore, just serious, like she needed everyone to hear her out. She wanted the cop to know she was on the boy's side, not the guy who started all the trouble. She made it clear she'd seen everything and was ready to back him up, pointing out that it was the other guy who pulled the knife first. Still, it wasn't right to just go off and nearly beat someone unconscious. Not long after, Zhongshan walked through the door and into his house. He walked into the kitchen and saw his mom sitting at the table, waiting for him. He finally walked in the door, way later than anyone expected. The clock on the wall made it obvious he'd missed dinner, and the food on the table was cold. Everyone had waited for him, but he just never came. Now, here he was again, looking like he was about to run right back out. His school bag was nowhere in sight, which only made things worse. It was basically the kind of move that would get most kids in trouble, and he knew it. His dad always let things slide, which probably explained why he got away with stuff like this all the time. Still, he went to wash his hands, knowing he couldn't dodge everything forever. When Jiangshan heard that all too familiar nagging voice, something just snapped inside him. He couldn't help it. Before he even thought about it, he reached out and hugged her tight. His dad noticed something was off as soon as he walked in. He could tell his son had been upset, maybe even on the verge of tears. The way his dad looked at him showed real concern, almost like he was ready to step in if anyone had messed with his kid. Even though he tried to act tough, seeing his dad worry made everything feel a bit heavier. He looked different today, quieter than usual. It seemed like something was off. Maybe he wasn't feeling his best. All that schoolwork and studying probably had him stressed out. Jiangshan's throat tightened as he tried to speak. He wanted to reassure his mom, so he told her he was okay and promised he'd listen to her from now on. Even though his voice was shaky, he meant every word. He knew everyone just wanted him to keep things simple. Nobody expected him to become some superstar or anything. If he could just stop causing trouble and finish school, his dad would handle the rest. There'd be a steady job waiting for him at some government office, nothing fancy but safe and predictable. That's all his family really wanted. Jiangshan sat there, his mom going on and on like usual. Even though she never seemed to run out of things to say, he could tell she really cared. Sitting in that moment, he felt this comfortable sense of warmth inside, like everything was okay. After dinner, Jiangshan stretched out on his bed and let out a quiet sigh. He found himself thinking about how different things used to be, back when life was a lot simpler and he didn't have to think about anything dangerous. Those memories felt far away now, almost like they belonged to someone else. He remembered how regular people had to work so hard just to have a little happiness in their lives. Villains could tear everything down like it was nothing. He got another shot at life, and this time he was set on making things different. He wanted to go for it and make sure he didn't have anything to look back on. The next morning, Jiangshan showed up at school. The old gatekeeper noticed him and flashed a thumbs up, kind of like when someone approves your post online. Even the girls from the fancy crowd, the ones who never paid much attention to him before, started talking. They leaned in, curious about Jiangshan from class 15. Suddenly, people were noticing he actually looked pretty good, and after seeing how he handled himself in that fight yesterday, everyone was starting to see him in a new light. Jiangshan had done something impressive, and now he was about to get recognized for it. The principal was planning to give him an award, which meant everyone would know about his achievement. It was the kind of moment that made all the effort feel worth it. When the director said those words, Jiangshan just froze. He hadn't thought that helping someone out would get this much attention. Now he couldn't help but wonder if his classmates would start acting different around him too. Just as he got to the classroom door, he could already hear everyone talking about him. They were all whispering and staring, bringing up how he'd burst in before, swinging his fists like it was something straight out of an action movie. Everyone was still thinking about Shanxi's moves from yesterday. They were wild, kind of like watching a legendary player pull off an unexpected win. The whole group couldn't help but remember it, comparing Shanxi's skills to those epic moments in big games. He offered to teach, and the other guy couldn't believe it. Like, this was a big deal. The word Godfather slipped out, and suddenly things felt more serious. You could tell this was going to be a turning point for them. Yang Tianli couldn't stand hearing them go on and on. He rolled his eyes, thinking these guys were acting like beating someone up was some huge achievement. Honestly, he just wanted them to stop bragging already. He looked over at Jiangshan, shifting gears and asking about the English homework from last night, as if to say he had better things to do than listen to their stories. Jiangshan just handed over his homework like it was nothing. Young Tianli, who was kind of a big deal at school, picked it up himself. For a second, it felt like a pretty cool moment, almost like getting noticed by someone everyone looks up to. Yang looked at the paper, unimpressed, and ripped it up without a second thought. To him, it was useless and didn't even matter. He made it clear it needed to be done over. Yangshan's deskmate shot up from his seat, staring right at Yang Tianli. Everyone could tell he was annoyed. Nobody expected Yang Tianli to suddenly tear up Yangshan's homework, and the whole class kind of froze for a second, not sure what to do next. The room got tense, and even some of the quieter kids started glancing over, waiting to see what would happen. Yang's lackey gave a smug look, clearly enjoying the situation. He decided that the best way to get back at the other guy was to make him rewrite the assignment 10 times and turn it in before the day was over. He could tell the other guy was just looking for trouble. Yang Tianli started talking, and everyone knew to listen. He had this way of taking over the room, making it clear that guys like him didn't put up with random interruptions. Anyone who tried to cut in usually got shut down fast, no questions asked. Right before things got heated, Jiangshan held his friend back. He knew there was no way around it. He had to swallow his pride and say sorry. Yang Tianli let out a short laugh, clearly not taking things seriously. He didn't see any reason to apologize, and it showed on his face. Zhang Shan's tone suddenly shifted. He sounded colder now, almost distant, as if he didn't care anymore. All of it was just because of that stubborn pride. Yang's lackey suddenly snapped to attention, energy lighting up in his eyes. He swung his fist right at Zhang Shan. Zhang Shan moved out of the way without breaking a sweat. But then, out of nowhere, a girl walking by stepped right into the path of danger. Zhang Shan moved fast, stepping in and quickly pulling her out of the way. Her nose caught a scrape. Zhang Shan's eyes narrowed, his stare turning cold. He knew this crossed a line. If someone hurt innocent people, they didn't deserve to get away with it. He grabbed the lackey's arm and locked it behind his back, holding him in place. He gripped it tighter, putting all his strength into twisting it as hard as he could. There was a nasty crack, and the boy's arm just broke. Yang Tianli watched as his buddy got taken down. Not wasting a second, he grabbed a bench nearby and went straight for Zhang Shan, swinging it at him. Zhang Shan used to be a special forces captain, so he saw it coming before it even happened. He turned fast, grabbed Tinley by the neck, and punched him hard. Right at that moment, a loud voice cut through the chaos. Someone was clearly mad, calling out Zhang Shan for always getting into fights and acting like he owned the place. The whole room tensed up, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. A few girls stepped up right away, trying to clear things up. The one in charge of discipline, Han Chung, was among them. The man didn't let them finish and shut them down quick. Everything went quiet as Zhang Sha headed into the office. Off to the side, Yang Tianli looked pretty pleased with himself, that annoying little smirk on his face. The director sat in the office, clearly unhappy. He looked at him with that disappointed face, like he couldn't believe anyone would go up against Tianli so directly. The atmosphere was heavy, and it was obvious the director thought challenging Tianli was a big mistake. Zhang Shan glared, not backing down. He couldn't believe people expected him to just sit there and take it whenever someone tried to mess with him. That wasn't really his style. The director let out a long sigh. He knew the kid's dad was a big deal. Definitely not someone you'd want to mess with. Even the principal stayed out of his way. Getting involved in this would only bring trouble. He spoke seriously, reminding him that all guys get fired up sometimes, but there's a time to chill out. Then he told him to write down what he did wrong and start acting better from now on. Back in class, Zhang Shan walked in to find everyone pumped up and excited. Guys were nodding at him, some giving him a thumbs up. People were clearly impressed. He could tell by the way they looked at him, almost like he'd just pulled off something epic that they all wished they could do. It felt good getting that kind of recognition, and he caught himself grinning as he headed to his seat. Zhang Shan's friends all looked relieved as they glanced his way. Even though things had been tense just a minute ago, everyone seemed to relax now that they knew he wasn't hurt. The worry on their faces faded, replaced by quiet smiles and nods. It was clear they cared, and just seeing Zhang Shan back on his feet made everything feel a little lighter. But seeing what happened just made Yang, Tianli's right-hand guy, even angrier. He could already tell that all eyes were on the other guy again. It always seemed to happen no matter what. Deep down, he wished he could just disappear for a second, hoping nobody would notice how much it bothered him. After school, he started thinking about getting a bunch of his friends together to stop that guy. He wondered if the guy could really handle it if 10 people showed up at once. Yang Tianli shook his head, realizing he'd acted without thinking. Now that he'd had a moment to cool off, he could see that just charging in and using strength alone wasn't the smart move. That kind of thing was for people who didn't know any better. In this world, there are rules for everything, but the people who figure out how to work around them, they're the ones who end up running the show. He grabbed his phone and called his dad's secretary. He turned to Uncle Zhao, curiosity written all over his face. Something had been bugging him, and he figured now was as good a time as any to ask. He wondered how someone was supposed to go about sending a person to juvenile detention. Was there a certain process or steps you had to follow? The whole idea seemed kind of intense, and he wasn't really sure what the right move would be. Right then, Lin Shi, the girl Zhang Shan had helped out earlier, walked over to him. He remembered how helpful she'd been the day before and wanted to let her know he appreciated it. Later, he wondered if she'd be around tonight, hoping they could hang out again. He handed over his dad's card, hoping to make a good impression. His dad wanted to meet and thank the other person face to face, showing real appreciation. Zhang Shan looked down and noticed the words, Eastern Theater Command, printed there. His chest tightened for a second. Lin Jinbong stood out as one of the youngest major generals around, and everyone in the military seemed to know his name. He was one of those guys people expected big things from, always getting noticed by the higher-ups. But after a while, word got around that he decided to step back and leave the main group behind. Zhang Shan took the card without making a big deal out of it. For him, taking care of bad guys was just something he was supposed to do. He didn't think General Lin needed to stress about it at all. He turned around and walked back to class. Jiang Shan had barely taken his seat when his desk mate scooted closer, clearly curious. He wanted to know what Lin wanted and started teasing Jiang Shan, half joking about Lin's dad wanting him as a future son-in-law. The look on his face said he was hoping for some juicy gossip. Jiang Shan looked over at him and noticed he was clearly jealous. He rolled his eyes, thinking the guy really needed to stop showing off. Right then, Yang Tianli walked up to Jiang Shan and told him the principal wanted to see him in the office. Jiang Shan could tell from Yang Tianli's face that this wasn't something he could ignore. Without wasting time, he got ready to head over, his mind already racing with what this could be about. As soon as Jiang Shan walked into the office, the principal looked straight at him, his finger jabbing through the air. The room felt tense, and Jiang Shan could sense everyone's eyes on him. The principal's voice blasted through the silence, blaming Jiang Shan for what happened to Han Chong. The weight of the accusation hit hard, and Jiang Shan stood there, not sure what to do next, the seriousness of the moment sinking in. Jiang Shan glanced down at the report he was holding and couldn't help but smirk. It talked about a skull fracture, but honestly, it looked like the paper had just come out of the printer. The ink was still fresh, making the whole thing feel almost fake. He realized right away that Yang Tianli was behind this. Just yesterday, he hadn't even come close to Han Chong's head, so there was no way a fracture could have happened then. The principal's voice got louder, filling the room with tension. He pointed out the evidence, clear as day, right there in front of everyone. There was no way to talk around it now, and everyone waited to see what would happen next. Jiang Shan didn't even let him finish talking. He just shot him a cold look, turned on his heel, and said he was heading straight to the hospital to see Han Cho. He needed to figure out for himself whether it was actually his own screw-up or if the blame was on the other guy. He stared straight at the principal, sizing him up. There was a bit of tension in the air, almost like a silent warning to back off. Deep down, he wondered what made everyone so certain about Yang, Tianli's dad, always having control over everything. Jiang Shan spoke up, catching the principal completely off guard. The kid's straightforward way of talking made the principal freeze for a second. He definitely hadn't seen that coming. Just then, 2 police officers rushed into the room. They moved straight toward Jiang Shan and told him he was being taken in for questioning about an assault. The whole vibe in the room shifted as everyone watched the officers lead him away. Jiang Shan kept his head down, not saying anything, while people started whispering and pulling out their phones to record what was happening. Yang Tianli walked in behind them, a smug look on his face. He was pretty sure Jiang Shan had no idea what was coming. For Yang, this was the moment he'd been waiting for, a chance to finally settle things on his terms. Jiang Shan stared at Yang Tianli, his eyes cold and sharp. He wasn't rushing things. He knew this was just the start, and there was a lot more to come. Not long after, they took him straight to the interrogation room. An officer slid a confession form across the table, staring him down. They wanted the truth, pressing him to explain why he had tried to take out his classmate. The room felt tense, and the weight of the question hung in the air, making it hard to think straight. Jiang Shan just smirked, looking like he had already figured things out. He didn't bother arguing or getting defensive. Instead, he pointed out that everyone was focused on the wrong thing. If they really wanted to know the truth, they should just look at the transfer records on Han Chong's phone. He sat there, arms crossed, staring straight ahead. Even though the room felt tense, he stayed calm and kept quiet. He knew the rules and wasn't about to give them anything before his lawyers showed up. He looked around the place, checking to see if there were any cameras. There weren't, which actually made sense to him. After all, nobody here even had a warrant. The guy looked at them, clearly not impressed. He noticed right away that they weren't even wearing their uniforms and didn't have any IDs on them. Everything about how they worked seemed sloppy, almost like they'd just made it up as they went along. Even the way they tried to question people seemed like they had no clue what they were doing. He honestly couldn't believe that the police station would let people like this in. The 2 officers stood there, caught off guard. They couldn't figure out how this kid seemed to know so much about their job, almost like he'd been hanging around the station for years. Jiang Shan kept his cool and asked for someone higher up, figuring the manager would probably understand how things were supposed to work. A cold laugh filled the room. The guy standing there made it clear rules weren't for everyone. He let the kid know he'd messed with the wrong crowd, and now he had to deal with the fallout. If the kid wanted things to go a bit easier, he just had to sign the confession, do that, and they'd cut 3 years off his sentence. Jiang looked the guy over the bureau chief, standing right in front of him. He couldn't help but smirk a little. The chief seemed way too eager to impress Yang, who was Tianli's dad. It was obvious the chief didn't have all that much power himself, probably just a deputy working under someone else. He leaned in, thinking about what it really means to move up in the world. Sure, getting ahead is great, but when someone tries to get there by stepping on everyone else, it never ends well. Eventually, things catch up to them, and when they finally crash, there's nothing left but the mess they made. The chief's face tightened up as soon as he heard those words. He looked annoyed and told Jiang Shan to be quiet. He grabbed Jiang Shan by the collar, pulling him close. The guy's anger was obvious, like he was ready to teach Jiang Shan a lesson right then and there. Right as he was about to finish, someone called out to him from outside, letting him know there was a call for the chief. He glanced at his phone, a little annoyed since he was in the middle of something. When he saw the message was from Theater Command Headquarters, he paused, realizing it might be serious. Jiang Shan laughed quietly to himself and waited patiently while the chief answered his phone. The chief stopped in his tracks. Theater Command was calling, and the timing couldn't be more suspicious. He couldn't help but wonder if this had something to do with the new kid. Jiang Shan noticed the chief pause for a moment and couldn't help but smirk. He clearly saw the chief getting stuck, probably not wanting to respond. With no other options, the chief answered the phone. Right away, he was told to let Jiang Shan go, no questions asked. The chief wasn't ready to give up yet. He kept pushing his point, not backing down even though things were getting tense. The guy on the other side suddenly burst in, slamming the office door open like he'd had enough. He looked fed up, clearly done wasting time with people like this. That guy turned out to be He Changshan, the one who always sticks close to Colonel Lin Jumbeng. The chief stiffened up, standing his ground as best he could. He wasn't used to people just storming in like that, especially when it broke the usual rules. It bugged him, but he tried not to let it show. He Changshan ignored everything else going on around him. He pulled out his pistol and pushed it right up to the chief's forehead, not hesitating for a second. The chief gave in right away and rushed to the interrogation room with He Changshan. He tried to act like everything was normal and that nothing was wrong at all. He Changshan spoke up, his words hitting hard. The room went quiet. If nothing actually happened, then what was the point of arresting the guy? He called out how bold it was to mess with someone connected to Colonel Lin. The chief's confidence faded fast and he tried to brush it off as just a misunderstanding. They showed up a bit after everyone else, but honestly, it was perfect timing. Before heading to the principal's office, Jiang Shan quietly handed Lin Jinbong's card to his deskmate. He let him know that if he didn't come back soon, the deskmate should go ahead and make the call. Jing Shan let out a quiet breath, finally able to relax. He was glad he'd stayed careful because if he hadn't, Tian Li's plan might have actually worked. He Changshan reached into his bag and took out some official-looking documents. He set them down on the table, making it clear that there was a right way to handle things. All they had to do was sign the forms and let the guy walk free. The chief rushed to do what he was told, annoyed but keeping it to himself. He knew the Yang family had messed with the wrong people this time. Everyone in the capital knew how powerful the Lin family was. Their name carried a lot of weight, and people paid attention whenever they were involved in something. With the military supporting this kid, it was clear he wasn't just your average student. The chief realized he needed to patch things up with him, and fast. After everything happened, He Changshan sat behind the wheel and looked over at Jiang Shan. He remembered that this was the student who'd stepped in and helped out earlier. He couldn't help but feel grateful, knowing Jiang Shan had just saved their commander's daughter. Jiang Shan remembered the time Uncle Lin had saved his life. Thinking about that, he figured things were even between them now. He, Changshan, couldn't help but laugh. He thought it was fair, wanting to see what someone could really do. She'd mentioned this guy was good, but he wanted to see for himself just how good. He leaned in a bit, curious and ready to be impressed. He didn't wait for the other guy to finish talking. Out of nowhere, he just swung his fist. Jiang Shan stiffened up, realizing that this was a test. He Changshan acted like he didn't know what was going on, pretending nothing was up. Deep down, though, he was just trying to play it cool because he'd gotten a little too nosy. While he was talking, he threw a punch. Jiang Shan didn't even break a sweat. He just stepped aside, dodging it without any trouble. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror, noticing the two guys wrestling around in the back seat. He kept his eyes on the road, spotting a checkpoint coming up ahead. Without making a big deal, he quietly tried to get their attention, hoping they'd calm down before anyone else noticed. He passed the smoke to Sean and let out a breath, relieved they hadn't been caught. The last thing he wanted was to deal with writing a report. Not long after, the car rolled up to the curb. He Chong let everyone know the commander was already upstairs, waiting for them. Jiang Shan walked in. He Shan rubbed his sore shoulder, thinking about that kid. Something about the way the kid fought up close was just on another level way stronger than he'd expected. His arm was already starting to ache from their last round. He tried to brush it off, not wanting anyone to notice he was hurting, and told one of the guys to go grab him some medicine. Jiang walked in, and the teacher finally saw him for the first time. The teacher told him to sit down, calling him by his nickname, T. Jiangshan lowered his head and gave a respectful nod to Uncle Lin, showing his gratitude. Lin Jimbon's face turned serious. He looked like he was carrying a lot on his mind. Deep down, he knew he should be grateful. After all, that was his only daughter. If no one had stepped up to help, things could have ended way worse. He honestly felt like he owed everything to the person who acted. Jiangshan kept his cool and just nodded, not making a big deal about what he did. For him, standing up for someone else was just the right thing to do. It wasn't about looking for praise or attention. He believed anyone decent would have done the same. Lin nodded, standing his ground right in front of the thug. Not many people would do that, but he wasn't backing down. That kind of courage? You have to respect it. He kept his eyes locked, ready for whatever would happen next. He passed Jiangshan a folder marked as Top Secret. Lin Junbong kept his voice down, looking serious. It seemed like Deputy District Chief Yang had been acting more on edge than usual these days. Just like a tree needs its branches trimmed to grow healthy and strong, sometimes you have to let go of certain things in life to move forward. Even though things were rough today, there was no need to stress too much. Yang and his son wouldn't keep acting like they owned the place forever. Jiangshan's eyes lit up when he heard that. Back in his last life, this was about the time when Yang Tianli's dad got caught. Back then, around $6 million of illegal cash just disappeared without a trace. Nobody had any clue where it went. But in 2024, people found all that money again hidden away in an old, empty house that used to belong to the Yang family. Lin shot a quick look over at Jiang, curious about what was going on in his head. Jiangshan let out a small smile, imagining what kind of reaction Deputy Chief Yang would have if someone broke into his place. It was 3 a.m. that night. Jiangshan showed up in all black, from his shirt down to his shoes, with a bag hanging off his shoulder. He quietly moved toward the door, making sure his mom, who was asleep on the couch, didn't wake up. Out of nowhere, she started talking in her sleep. She mumbled about the father and son being out all night, not doing anything useful, and even said something about them breaking their legs. Jiangshan stopped what he was doing for a second, caught off guard. Then he figured out she was just dreaming and shrugged it off. He let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, and made his way out without any trouble. He pulled up to the Yang family's house not long after. Jiangshan took a good look at all the security cameras set up around the place. He wanted to figure out how they worked and where they were pointing before making his next move. He glanced over the crowd and couldn't help but notice how packed it was. It made sense now why things were so messed up. Clearly, the people in charge weren't doing their jobs right. He noticed a spot where no one could see him. Thinking it looked safe, he decided that was the best place to make his move. He set the timer on his watch and checked it again, just to be sure. He stepped onto the trash bin and pushed himself up, using it to launch higher. He used his speed to flip over the wall and landed right in the courtyard. He remembered that the reports talked about cash stashed away in some old decoration, but none of them gave the exact spot. There was a ton of cash, definitely not something you could just tuck away in a regular decoration. He spotted the fountain right in the middle of the place. That had to count as some kind of decoration, right? The idea hit him out of nowhere. It was weird seeing the fountain still going at midnight. When he got closer, he noticed there was actually something tucked away inside. While he was standing there, he heard a guard complaining from somewhere nearby. The guy sounded exhausted, clearly not happy about having to do another night shift. He couldn't figure out why they even bothered, since nobody would be dumb enough to break into the deputy chief's place anyway. To him, it just felt pointless. Out of nowhere, water splashed loud enough to make everyone look over. One of the guards tensed up, trying to figure out who had just shown up. Jiangshan glanced over his shoulder and spotted a white cat staring back at him. The guards let out a quiet breath and headed off to check out other parts of the area. After the guy left, Jiangshan stood up slowly from the edge of the fountain, trying not to draw any attention. He couldn't believe he'd found something like this, tucked away where no one would ever think to look. It made sense nobody else had gotten their hands on it. Stumbling across it so easily felt unreal, almost like luck, or maybe something bigger, was on his side. He stared at the number $6 million. That was way more cash than he ever thought possible. There was no way his backpack could fit all of it. He looked around and noticed a handcart close by. He stacked the cash on top and started to push it forward. A small grin crept onto his face as he stared at what he had. He started thinking about all the things he could do with it. Maybe he could buy a house, or try his luck with crypto. These days, some people seem to get rich just by making the right moves online. Just imagining the possibilities put him in a better mood. Right then, a car drove by him. The car slammed on its brakes and stopped just inches from where he stood. Tian Li stumbled out, clearly drunk. He yelled after Zhang Shan, telling him to rot in jail, his voice echoing down the street. He shoved the cart with his foot, looking down with a cold glare. In that moment, he made it clear that he thought the other guy was worthless, no better than the trash in the cart. To him, it was like that was where the other guy belonged, right there with the garbage, not worth a second thought. Out of nowhere, young Tianli realized the card in his hand wasn't just some random trash. It was actually a fat stack of cash. He stared at it, not sure if he was imagining things. Finding money just lying around on the street didn't make sense to him. Jiang Shan had snuck up behind him without making a sound. Zhang Shan didn't waste any time. He stepped in fast, and before anyone could react, Yang Tianli was already on the ground, completely out. He stared at the other guy with a cold look, making it clear he wasn't impressed. Before anyone called someone else trash, he thought they should probably take a good look at themselves first. He doubted they ever would. People always talked about how some kids just did whatever they wanted, breaking rules like it was nothing. He remembered how everyone used to call him a spoiled brat, throwing words around about driving without a license and doing stuff he clearly wasn't supposed to do. Teachers and parents would shake their heads, acting like he'd never amount to anything, and his mom's warnings echoed in the back of his mind. It was like no matter what he did, people just expected the worst from him. He followed up by landing 2 solid kicks, just to make his point clear. He reached into his bag and pulled out a kitchen knife. He didn't think it was worth taking things too far, but he was more than ready to show the other guy how things worked around here. He grabbed Yang by the hair and yanked his head up. He grabbed his razor and went for it, getting rid of every bit of hair until his face was completely smooth. Jiangshan finished up and stretched, his neck aching a bit from the work. Dunn was kind of surprised. He hadn't thought something so detailed could wear him out like that. When Mr. Young wakes up, he's probably going to get a good look at himself and react to the changes. The next morning, Jiangshan's mom came by his room and knocked on the door to wake him up. He barely opened his eyes and pulled the blanket over his head, hoping for just a little more sleep. He knew if he didn't get up on time, breakfast would be gone. His mom had plans to head out to the temple later, so if he wanted to eat, he had to move fast. Jiangshan stood in the hallway, trying to piece things together. The kitchen knife sat on the counter, weirdly covered in hair, and the floor by the front door was totally wet, like someone had just come in from a rainstorm and tracked water everywhere. He remembered feeling someone moving around during the night, but he couldn't tell if it was real or just his imagination. His mom, always on high alert, was already checking everything, searching for clues like some kind of pro-investigator. Jiangshan realized she was probably wondering if someone had broken in or if something stranger was going on. Meanwhile, he felt a little guilty for staying up way too late and accidentally dozing off again. At the same time, things were unfolding at the Yongvia. A guard who had just wrapped up his shift noticed some guy, clearly hammered, sprawled out right by the gate. He was already annoyed, so he kicked the guy lying on the road. It was way too early for this. Some drunk dude just sprawled out, blocking the way. He wanted the guy to snap out of it and move, like everyone should know who runs this street. The drunk guy stumbled around, barely able to keep his eyes open. He glared at everyone like he owned the place, clearly not used to anyone standing up to him. The guard took one look at the guy and realized it was young Master Yang. He was surprised to see him like this, barely able to get his words out. Yang squinted and rubbed the back of his head, clearly annoyed by all the noise around him. The sound was really starting to get to him, and he wished everyone would just quiet down for a bit. He noticed something weird under his hand, a prickly, uncomfortable sensation that caught him off guard. He glanced down and noticed bits of hair all over the floor. He felt anger rise up fast. He shouted, trying to find out who was behind it. He thought about how his dad could easily ruin this guy's life. If they could get one person thrown in jail, the next would be even easier. In his mind, it wasn't just about getting back at Jiangshan. He wanted the whole family to suffer for what had happened. Young Tinley rushed home, his eyes red and watery. He was upset, clearly having a rough day. Someone at school had messed with him again, and he just wanted his dad to make it stop. He hurried inside, looking for comfort, hoping his dad could fix everything. He stopped right in the doorway, not moving an inch. 2 people, a guy and a woman in uniforms, were leading his dad out of the house. His dad's hands were locked in cuffs, and he kept his head down as they walked him past everyone. Yang jumped forward, desperate to stop his dad from leaving with the stranger. He didn't care who the guy was, or what reason he had for taking his dad away. Yang wasn't about to let it happen, and you could see how ready he was to fight anyone who tried. The officer stepped forward, looking straight at On Tianli. There was no point in hiding. Everyone in the room could tell who he was. Ong Tianli's face tightened, but he didn't back down. The officer explained they were from the Anti-Corruption Bureau and that Ong Tianli's dad was in serious trouble. They wanted Tianli to cooperate with their investigation. Yang Tianli's face went pale. He just stood there, frozen, looking like he'd seen something he really didn't want to believe. Tianli stood there, realizing his dad wasn't going to come to the rescue this time. Someone nearby looked at him with a cold stare, making it clear that he was on his own. Back at school, things were carrying on as usual. Jiangshan was dozing off at his desk when his deskmate suddenly jolted him awake, eyes wide with excitement. Word was flying around that Yang Tianli's dad had just been arrested. Jiangshan didn't seem too fazed, just giving a half-hearted nod like it was no big deal. His deskmate just stared at him, totally confused. It was like he couldn't figure out why the guy wasn't reacting at all. Jiangshan stayed calm, thinking that bad actions usually catch up with people anyway. He didn't really see why anyone would be surprised by it. Meanwhile, his deskmate just looked worn out, barely reacting like he was over it all. He looked worn out, with tired eyes and messy hair, like he hadn't slept much. There was this weird, damp smell hanging around him too, like he'd been out in the rain or something. He tried his luck fishing by the river. Thing is, fishing's not allowed in Zhongha. If someone catches you, you're in trouble, so he kept looking over his shoulder, hoping no one would notice. Back in his previous life, that political mess almost took over the city. This time, something was different. Deputy Yang got arrested a bit sooner than he usually did. Somewhere far away, a butterfly fluttered its wings, starting something big without anyone noticing. Maybe just by coming back to life, he'd already changed how things were supposed to go. He decided not to overthink things. There was a much bigger issue right in front of him. What was he supposed to do with 6 million? He wanted payback, so the cash needed to help with that. But $6 million wasn't close to enough to build up the crew he'd need to go up against Qin Shao. He wondered if it was smarter to put the money somewhere it could grow on its own. He thought about buying the building and renting it out someday. He'd grown up without much money, so for him, the most down-to-earth goal he could come up with was owning a place and renting it out someday. He wished he'd put more effort into studying. Still stuck in his thoughts, he found himself standing at the entrance of an alley. Inside, a group of thugs had surrounded a man and were knocking him down, not letting up even as he tried to protect himself. Jiangshan shook his head, thinking about how this old neighborhood just kept getting worse. Lately, there were way too many troublemakers hanging around. He figured he'd let the guy take a few hits first, then he and his crew would jump in. The guys cornered him, making it clear they were after his cash like it was the only thing that mattered. He tried to back off, hands up, saying he was broke, hoping they'd let him go. Desperation showed on his face as he begged them to give him a break. People nearby started whispering to each other, pointing out that the guy getting shoved around was supposed to be a bureau chief. It was weird seeing someone important like that getting picked on, especially by thugs. Everyone seemed to think it was pretty embarrassing for him. One of the punks reached into his jacket and yanked out a steel pipe, holding it tight in his hand. The old man stood his ground, not showing any fear at all. He looked totally calm, like nothing could shake him, even with things getting tense. It was almost like he wouldn't believe this was serious until he was actually in real danger. He let out a low sound and dropped to the ground, clearly out of energy. The thugs stopped in their tracks, eyes locked on the guy sprawled out on the ground. He wasn't moving at all, and nobody could really tell if he was still alive. The guy holding the pipe clenched his jaw and lifted it again, getting ready to bring it down hard. Right when it looked like the hit was about to land, Jiangshan suddenly rushed in, closing the distance in one quick move. The thug went flying through the air after he got kicked. The guy on the ground stared up, totally surprised. Of all people, he never thought Jiangshan would be the one to help him out. Jiangshan couldn't help but smirk as he spotted Director Dong walking in. It wasn't every day you'd catch someone like Dong stepping out of his usual comfort zone, especially not wandering into a place like this. Jiangshan wondered what could have made Dong leave his fancy office and show up somewhere so unexpected. The sight was almost funny, like seeing someone totally out of place and trying not to look awkward. Jiangshan never thought he'd see someone like Director Dong getting pushed around by a bunch of street punks. He jumped in right away, sending one guy flying with a hard kick and taking down the rest before they even knew what hit them. Director Dong looked up, caught off guard. He hadn't expected to see Jiangshan walk in like that. Jiangshan kept his cool, not showing any sign of nerves. He looked at the other guy with a steady gaze, almost like he was expecting the same question back. It was pretty clear he wasn't surprised to see things had turned out this way, and he didn't seem bothered by the situation. Instead, he seemed more curious about how the other person had ended up here, especially since he was supposed to be a director. It was like Jiangshan wanted to know what went wrong on his side, too. Don's eyes darted around the room. He kept his voice low, almost like he didn't want anyone else to hear, as he explained that he was doing undercover work as a plainclothes cop. Jiangshan had been suspicious for a while. He grabbed Donga by the ankles, not impressed at all. He couldn't help but mess with Donga, thinking that even an undercover emperor would at least bring a couple of bodyguards. To Jiangshan, Donga's attempt to blend in was pretty weak. Anyone could tell something was off. Dong didn't waste any time. He switched gears right away, telling Xiao Zhang to sign up for the police civil service exam and become his bodyguard. Jiangshan stopped him right there, not wanting to hear any more nonsense. He had something else on his mind and needed to get straight to the point. Dong kept moving, acting like everything was cool. He said his car wasn't far and figured they could talk there. He definitely thought the kid had something special. Jiangshan looked at the thugs, who were clearly caught off guard. He couldn't help but notice how reckless these kids were. They just did whatever popped into their heads, never really thinking about what might happen next. Dong suddenly remembered something important. He looked at the group of kids, thinking about how young they really were. He knew they couldn't have handled things alone. Deep down, he felt grateful. If it wasn't for the help he got today, things could have ended badly for him. Jiangshan cut in, pointing out that the old neighborhood security had gotten pretty bad lately. There were just way too many issues popping up, and it was clear things needed to get sorted out. Don didn't even hesitate. He was all in, knowing this needed to get sorted out fast. The only thing was, General Lin had his hands deep in this situation too. Uncle Lin always paid attention to what was happening around the neighborhood. He wanted everyone to feel safe. Dong, on the other hand, had his eyes on moving up in the ranks. He knew that just blending in with the crowd and working undercover wasn't going to be enough. If he wanted to get noticed and get ahead, he needed to actually get things done and show some real results. Jiangshan looked over at Dongpir, trying to figure out what he was really up to. Jiangshan gave a small smile. He had a plan to make some money, but he still needed someone he could really trust to help him out. The eastern block of the old district wouldn't be around much longer. It was set to be torn down soon. Dong's eyes went wide. He realized he needed to move fast and get ready before everyone else caught on. Dong figured that doing this would need a ton of money and knowing the right people. Jiangshan stepped in, letting everyone know he had the money and the right contacts to get things moving. But what he really needed now was someone who could handle problems when they came up, someone on the inside who could keep everything above board and make sure nothing went wrong. Jiangshan looked over with a smug grin, thinking it really just came down to whether Director Dong was interested in making some extra cash before calling it quits. He didn't waste time overthinking things. He nodded with confidence, ready to show he meant business. He decided that if someone was willing to trust him, he'd return that trust right back. From that moment, he started thinking of the guy almost like family, like a nephew he wanted to look out for. No matter what came up, he was down to help out, no questions asked. Uncle Dong finished up the deal with a calm nod, acting like he'd done this 100 times. He seemed to know more than he let on, especially about the demolition plan. The younger guy wondered how Uncle Dong got his information. Maybe the Lin family had tipped him off, or maybe he'd just figured it out for himself. Either way, it was clear Uncle Dong was one step ahead, always playing it smart. The next morning, Jiangshan walked back through the school gates. The class monitor hurried over and dropped to his knees, hitting the floor hard. She looked desperate as she reached out to Jiangshan, hoping he'd help her dad. She knew she'd messed up before and was really regretting it now, wishing things could go back to how they used to be. Even though it was hard to admit her mistakes, she was willing to swallow her pride if it meant Jiangshan might step in and help. He realized he was the only person who could reach the Lin family. The pressure was heavy on his shoulders. He knew if anyone could convince them, it had to be him. Desperate to fix things, he was ready to swallow his pride and do whatever it took, even if it meant going down on his knees and begging. When he bent forward, his wig slid right off his head. He pulled off his hat, showing that he was totally bald. Everyone in the class just stopped what they were doing and stared. A second later, everyone in the room burst out laughing. They couldn't help themselves after seeing what just happened. Some guys started joking around about someone suddenly getting wise, poking fun at his shaved head and calling him a new man. The whole vibe got lighter, and it was clear nobody was going to let him forget this anytime soon. Yang's face turned bright red as he tried to keep his cool, but anger was all over him. He couldn't stand the laughter around him and snapped, his frustration boiling over. Jiangshan stared for a second, confused. The guy had gone and shaved his whole head. Was his own haircut really that bad? The class monitor's eyes started to water, and he looked like he was holding it together just barely. He kept thinking about how he should have done things himself instead of letting that guy mess with it. Now, standing there, he felt super embarrassed, like everyone was staring at him for all the wrong reasons. Jiangshan let out a heavy sigh and stood up. He didn't think guys should be down on their knees like that. It just looked sad. The monitor glanced up, his eyes bright with hope, waiting to see if someone would step in and give him a hand. Jiangshan's expression changed, all trace of friendliness gone. He reminded everyone that he never claimed otherwise. He hadn't said what they thought. In fact, he pointed out that the guy's dad was the one who broke the rules, and if anyone knew the truth, it was his own kid. He realized it was time to stop trying to work things behind the scenes and just help out with the investigation. With that, he headed off, knowing class was about to begin. The monitor noticed that Zhang Shan wasn't going to step in. He quickly brushed the tears from his face, trying to pull himself together. As he walked away, he shot Zhang Shan a cold look. It was clear he wasn't done yet. Whatever had happened, he was determined to make Zhang Shan pay for it. Zhang Shan's deskmate couldn't help but laugh when he saw what happened. He glanced over at Zhang Shan, clearly amused by the whole thing. To him, it looked like the teacher's bad luck with his hair was some kind of warning. Maybe Zhang Shan should watch out too. Later that night, the class monitor met up with some rough-looking guys in a quiet alley. Everyone looked tired and beat up, still carrying bruises from yesterday's fight. Some of their friends, like Fatty and a couple others, hadn't even made it out of the hospital yet. Even though they were hurting, the group seemed unsure about going through with whatever the class monitor had planned. He kept his cool and started getting things together, making sure nothing was left out. Even though things were tense, he moved quickly, focused on what needed to be done. The underlings did what they were told, their hands trembling as they lit the Molotov cocktails. One of the guys paused, clearly unsure. He looked at the others, not totally on board with what they were about to do. Getting into fights was one thing, but setting something on fire? That was a whole new level, and he knew it could land them in real trouble. He didn't buy any of that serious talk. To him, it would just look like some random accident, nothing more. It was time to finish things. He had to make sure nothing was left behind. As he walked away, he knew Jiang Shan was about to find out just how bad things could get. Right when one of the guys lifted the bottle, ready to toss it, everything seemed to slow down for a second. Someone spoke quietly from the darkness, catching Yang off guard as he was writing poems under the window late at night. Yang stopped in his tracks. He looked around, trying to spot who or what was hiding nearby. His heart started racing as he tried to act tough, not wanting anyone to see he was on edge. He spun around, and his knees nearly gave out. Standing right there was Zhang Shan. Jianshan walked into the light, looking calm but serious. He spotted someone outside his house and wanted to know exactly what was going on. He noticed someone who definitely shouldn't have been awake at that hour. It caught him off guard, making him wonder why they were up when they were supposed to be sleeping. The boss snapped, clearly losing patience, and told his guys to go after him. But the group held back, remembering too well what happened yesterday. They recognized the guy. He was the one who took them down before, and none of them were eager to mess with him again. The hesitation hung in the air as they glanced at each other, not sure if they wanted a repeat of the last encounter. He looked at the other guy, waiting to see what he'd do. This was his shot to get even, to show if he'd step up or let the moment slide. He shouted as loud as he could, but everyone just stood frozen, not a single person willing to step forward. Zhang Shan gave a quick smirk, looking like he already knew how things would turn out. He didn't seem bothered about who was stepping up first, because in his eyes, it wouldn't make a difference. Everyone there was going to end up in the same situation anyway. The next second, he rushed ahead, moving fast without thinking twice. His hand snapped forward fast, cutting through the air. He crashed his fist right into the thug's face. Blood splattered everywhere when the man dropped to the ground, his face messed up beyond recognition. Jiangshan's eyes lit up red, and just standing near him felt intense, almost like he was wild and dangerous. He looked down at the bodies on the ground, his face unreadable and icy. The thug dropped his Molotov, and as soon as it hit the ground, it exploded. Flames shot out everywhere, racing across the floor. Yang glared, his patience gone. He snapped, pointing at the guy and making it clear he wanted someone to take him out, no questions asked. The last guy standing caught sight of Zhang Shan's eyes, glowing bright red. That was enough to stop him in his tracks. He just stood there, totally frozen, not sure what to do next. He spun around and took off running. Suddenly, it hit him. He'd totally forgotten to turn off the gas at home. Well, that was going to be a problem for later. For now, he just hoped his boss would manage on his own. Yang watched him leave, anger burning in his eyes. He couldn't believe this was happening, not after everything he'd done for him. It felt like a punch to the gut, seeing someone he trusted just walk away like that. The monitor kept trying to raise his voice, but Zhongshan looked up at him with a cold stare. He didn't say much, just kept his eyes locked on the guy, making it clear he wanted an answer about what they were supposed to do next. The room felt tense, with everyone wondering how things were going to play out. Sweat started to drip down the monitor's face. He was really scared. He struggled to hold on to the Molotov, his hand shaking as he lifted it. His eyes darted around, making it clear he didn't want anyone getting any closer. If anyone so much as took a step toward him, he looked ready to throw it and set the whole place on fire. Zhongshan didn't waste a second. Before anyone could react, he was already right there, moving fast and closing the distance in an instant. Jiangshan's hand shot out fast, locking onto the monitor's arm with a grip that wouldn't budge. It was the kind of hold that made the monitor freeze up, unsure what to do next. The monitor's arm was trapped in a grip so tight it hurt. He couldn't do anything about it. No matter how hard he tried, he knew he didn't stand a chance against this guy. He watched W step forward, panic rising in his chest. He hadn't meant for things to get so serious. After all, they'd sat in the same classroom for months. Now, all he wanted was for W to back off and let things slide. Jiangshan's smile faded, turning sharp and distant. He wasn't joking around anymore. If these guys wanted to stick to being just classmates, that was cool with him. But he really just wanted them to keep their mouths shut and not make things harder. He threw a strong punch and glared, clearly annoyed. He was worried his mom might hear the noise. The monitor took a rough beating. His cries echoed for a while before everything finally went quiet. Not long after, the sound of sirens filled the air as police cars pulled up to the scene. People around started pointing and yelling when they spotted the bald guy trying to slip away. Everyone knew who he was and wanted to make sure he didn't get away this time. As they dragged the battered monitor away, he didn't go quietly. Frustration showed all over his face. He couldn't believe they were arresting him. In his mind, it was clear who started the whole mess, and he was still hurting from his leg being broken in the fight. He snapped at Director Dong, pissed off and hurt. All he could think about was how much his dad had helped Dong Li in the past, and now this was how he was treated. The anger burned in his chest, making it hard to hold back. Dong just smiled at Yang. He could tell that Yang hadn't really learned how to handle himself like an official. It was pretty clear that Yang's dad never sat him down and explained how things worked, especially when it comes to reading the room and understanding what's going on. Dong seemed almost amused, like he was watching someone try to play a game without knowing the rules. He knew messing around without checking the ground first was just asking for trouble. If you're not careful, you're the one who gets burned. Once the monitor was gone, Dong shot a grin over at Zhongshan. It was pretty late, but Dong seemed impressed with how Zhongshan had dealt with everything. He figured Zhongshan could use something to do and thought about giving him a new project, maybe to keep him out of trouble or just to see what he could handle next. Jiangshan didn't care about saving the guy's pride. He just turned his back and walked off, thinking about how he needed to get some rest. Real work was waiting for him in the morning. The next morning, Zhongshan made his way into the rundown old district. The streets looked rough, with old buildings leaning on each other and paint peeling off the walls. Trash was scattered along the sidewalk, and the air felt heavy, like the place hadn't changed in years. Zhongshan glanced around, taking it all in, knowing he was far from the newer parts of the city. Director Dong moved slowly down the muddy road, not looking too happy about it. The ground was full of potholes, and it didn't look like the kind of place anyone would expect to find much value. He seemed doubtful that there was any money to be made here, even if the whole area got torn down. Meanwhile, Zhongshan remembered what happened before. 17 people had actually become millionaires right on this spot. Zhongshan flashed a sly smile, like he was about to share something only the cool kids knew. The area was about to get swept up in the city's latest expansion plans. With the high-tech zone coming in, everyone knew land prices were going to shoot up. People were already talking about how much money they'd get paid out. Director Dong couldn't help but laugh out loud. He was clearly impressed that someone had picked up on that kind of insider info. In that moment, he felt pretty good about his decision. Maybe teaming up with this person was the right call after all. Jiangshan felt pretty good about his chances. Now that the old guy was on his team, he figured he could grab a decent chunk of the demolition project for himself. Director Dong wasn't finished yet. There were still a bunch of places left to look over, and he was already on the move, not slowing down for anyone. They showed up at this rundown bar called Slow Time. The place looked like it had seen better days, and there was a for sale sign hanging on the door. The guy slid a contract across the table, pointing to the spot where the boss needed to sign. $15,000 bucks. Just like that, it was his. Don checked out the place, taking in the details. It actually looked pretty decent, way better than he expected. He couldn't help but wonder why anyone would want to get rid of it. The owner let out a long sigh, looking tired. His son had gotten into gambling and owed a lot of money. Now, loan sharks showed up at the shop every day, demanding payment. If the owner couldn't come up with the cash soon, he knew he might lose the whole building. Dong smacked his hand down on the counter. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His face tightened, clearly annoyed, as he thought about how disrespectful that was. Zhongshan's eyebrows pulled together as he watched the debt collectors show up right before the demolition. The timing was just way too perfect, and it made him uneasy. Zhongshan looked over, curious about the new guy. Chun Jin-Hu, the guy everyone called Tiger, had his eyes on the bar. For some reason, it looked like he cared more about the place than the money that was owed. The owner couldn't shake off this uneasy feeling, so he decided to sell the bar as quickly as possible, not wanting to stick around and see what might happen next. Jiangshan stopped in his tracks, caught off guard. He gave a small smile, realizing what was going on. It was clear now someone else was interested in the old district. Director Dong was ready to kick back and have a drink to celebrate, but Jiangshan was already on his way out the door. The director held onto the contract, knowing he couldn't let his guard down. There were others out there, all hoping for the same shot. This wasn't the moment to get comfortable. He had to stay sharp and keep the contract secure. At the same time, a guy leaned back and took a deep drag from his cigar. Next to him, a confident woman leaned in, catching his attention. She seemed to want him to focus on her instead of whatever was happening outside. The man didn't bother to look back. He stood there, acting like he owned the place, almost as if checking out everything was his right. He seemed to think he was the boss, just coolly sizing up his surroundings like it was his kingdom. The woman moved in a little closer, her voice getting softer as she looked at him. She seemed curious, almost teasing, as if she was trying to figure out what all the fuss was about with him being called king. It was almost like she wanted to see how he'd react, maybe even test if he'd treat her any differently now. He laughed, looking proud. Qin Jinhu had been in charge of the knights in Jingcheng for 2 decades. People called him the Night King. Casinos, loan sharks, pawn shops, even the local transport. This guy had his hands in everything. People around the city started calling him Chun Half City because it felt like he owned half the place. Once it gets past midnight, everyone knows he basically runs the whole town. Right then, a car pulled up and stopped close by. Inside the room, Director Dong spoke up. He mentioned Xiao Zhang and Qin Jin, that guy everyone knew for being tough and kind of unpredictable. If Qin Jin got involved with the whole demolition thing, it could cause real trouble. People were saying he had ties to the Chun family over in the capital. Zhongshan felt a sudden sinking feeling in his gut. He started to wonder if this had something to do with the Qin family. Back in his previous life, the Chun family was the one who took him down. He noticed they had arrived and made up his mind right then. Someday, he'd get revenge on the Chun family, no matter what it took. Director Dong noticed he wasn't saying anything and started to wonder if he actually knew the Qin family. Jiangshan let out a quiet scoff. He knew Chun Jinhu was just some wild guy with nothing to lose, someone who only got anywhere because he got lucky. Jiangshan didn't think much of him. To him, Chun Jinhu was just another troublemaker who got by thanks to random chance. He stared at the dog, tense and ready, not about to let it get away with anything. If that dog even tried to mess around, he'd step in before it could do anything. Old Dong kept busy lining up new properties, working behind the scenes as usual. The other guy handled the cash, telling Old Dong to just focus on making the deals happen while he took care of everything else. It was a routine they both knew well. Old Dong found the opportunities, and his partner made sure the money was ready to go. Jiang Shan gazed out the window, lost in thought. He remembered the history he had with the Qin stuff that never really got settled. Now, he figured it was time to get payback, even if it was just a little at a time. On Qin Jinhu's side, he got word that someone messed with the bar deal in the old district. The news hit him hard, and anger flared up right away. He couldn't believe someone had the nerve to interfere with his plans. His underling started to fumble with his words, looking uncomfortable. Everyone around already knew the story. The rumors had gone around that the old guy had sold the place. Chen Jin smacked the guy across the face, looking annoyed. He couldn't believe someone could mess up something so simple. It was obvious he thought the guy was useless. He'd been pulling shady stuff, setting people up, slipping stuff into their drinks, but somehow, someone still managed to stop him. It was like all his sneaky plans fell apart right when it mattered most. Now, he had to figure out who messed things up for him. Right then, a man hurried into the scene. The gate attendant seemed relieved to see him, calling out to let him know that the manager had finally arrived. Things outside were getting intense. Tiger was clearly losing his cool. The manager walked in and immediately reached for his phone, trying to settle Tiger. He wanted Tiger to relax and let them handle things, promising they'd look into what happened. He showed the screen to Chin Jin Hu. He checked out the photo. It showed a student, and standing next to him was a guy who looked a lot like Dong Li. Everyone knew Dong Li was always hanging around the Yang family, doing whatever they wanted. But now, with the Yangs out of the picture, it was surprising to see Dong Li still around, acting like nothing had changed. No one seemed to recognize the new guy. He didn't have that usual vibe the others from the underworld carried, and his face wasn't familiar at all. The students looked him over, trying to figure out what his deal was. Don was the district chief, so messing with him wasn't an option. The order was clear: dig up everything there was to know about this student. In just 3 days, a full report had to be ready and waiting on the boss's desk. No shortcuts, no excuses. The guy nodded, not taking his eyes off the bar. He knew his job: watch the people inside and figure out what they'd do next. No one wanted to mess up, not with the tension in the air. Everyone was waiting for someone to make a move. He knew messing up wasn't an option. The threat was serious. One wrong move, and he'd be in way more trouble than he could handle. The pressure was real, and he could almost feel the warning hanging over him, making every decision count. Jiang Shan and his friends hung out by the back door of Chun Jin Wu's nightclub, glancing around and checking their phones while they waited. The alley was quiet, just the distant thump of music coming from inside. The guys tried to play it cool, but every once in a while someone would peek over their shoulder, watching for any sign of movement from the club. One of the guys reached out and grabbed Jiang Shan, his hand kind of shaky. Shanzai realized where he was, right in the middle of Tiger's territory. Everyone knew Herdy didn't mess around here. Jiang Shan kept his cool. Nothing really rattled him. He just stuck to the plan no matter what. He just sat there, scrolling through his phone, waiting for it to be over. He figured if anything went sideways, he'd handle it and make sure no one else got dragged into the mess. It was his way of protecting everyone, ready to take the blame so the others wouldn't have to deal with any trouble. The kid paused, glancing around. He was young, and this place was covered in ice. Jiang Shan started messing around with him, bringing up the new console he'd been begging for. He joked that if the kid didn't care about it anymore, he should just head home. In the end, the thought of finally playing that game was enough to make the kid stick around. Jiang Shan motioned for everyone to duck down and stay out of sight. He wanted them to hang back until he let them know it was safe to move. He was about to meet the underground emperor face to face for the first time. His mind raced as he tried to imagine what it would be like, wondering if the guy would really live up to all the hype. He slid his hands into his pockets and stared ahead, looking totally sure of himself. There was this vibe about him, like he expected everyone to keep up. Thanks to his time spent on anti-gambling raids in his past life, he already knew where the hidden entrance was. He walked up to the door and gave it a knock. A little door slid open and some guy looked out. He didn't seem interested in talking or doing anything, just wanted people to leave. The way he said it made it clear nobody was getting in tonight. Jiang Shan's brain kicked into gear. He remembered going through the case files earlier. That phrase, "no business tonight," wasn't random, it was a code. Sometimes getting it right is all about luck, whether it's for business or anything else. The hatch slid open, and the guys on the other side stepped back, making room for him. They treated him with respect, all eyes on his new look as he walked in. Jiang Shan pulled out a stack of bills and waved it around, acting like it was no big deal. Everyone around him couldn't help but take notice, their eyes drawn to the money in his hand. He flashed a quick grin and looked around, curious about what was going on. He wanted to see what was cool in the place and was ready to check things out. He gave a quiet clap with his hands. Right after that, a group of bunny girls stepped out together. They walked in perfect sync, wearing matching uniforms, and flashed friendly smiles at everyone in the room. The whole vibe got more upbeat as they welcomed the guests, making it feel like the party was just getting started. Jiang Shan walked into the casino and immediately noticed a guy on his knees, begging someone for cash. The man looked desperate, clearly hoping for another chance to win back what he'd lost. It was obvious things weren't going well for him, and the whole scene made it clear just how risky this place could be. One of the bunny girls laughed quietly, eyeing him with a teasing grin. She seemed to think luck was on his side tonight, like he was the type to leave the place with pockets full of cash. Jiang Shan let out a short laugh. He didn't think gambling was just about luck, even though the bunny girl seemed confused, tilting her head as if to ask what he really meant. The guy at the counter looked like he belonged there, probably someone who worked at the place. He didn't seem too impressed by what was going on and just nodded, like he'd seen this 1,000 times before. Without making a big deal out of it, he started getting out 10 grand worth of chips, moving with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing the job inside out. In just a few seconds, he watched as piles of chips appeared right in front of him, all lined up and ready to go. Most guys figure gambling just comes down to luck, but it's really all about reading people and knowing how they think. He always had some small moves up his sleeve. Zhongshan sat down, ready to get started on what he had planned for the night. He looked down at his cards. Ace of hearts, king of spades, queen of clubs. It wasn't the best hand ever, but it wasn't bad either. He spotted a heavy-set guy standing next to him. His ear gave a quick twitch, and his face tensed up, hinting at some excitement. The guy probably had a strong hand. The guy with the long hair sat across the table looking totally chill. No one could really tell what he was thinking. Those long pinky nails weren't just for looks. He probably used them to scratch hidden marks onto the cards. The dealer checked in with the group, making sure everyone had finished looking at their cards and giving them a chance to raise if they wanted. The fat guy and the dude with long hair both rushed to make their moves. Jiangshan didn't say a word, just sat there quietly. The dealer turned to him, waiting to see what he'd do next. Was he going to stay in the game or back out? Jiangshan didn't say anything. He just pushed his whole stack of chips into the middle of the table, going all in. The fat man stared, caught off guard as the kid pushed all his chips forward. He tried to figure out what kind of cards the kid could possibly be holding. The long-haired guy narrowed his eyes, studying Jiangshan. He didn't buy it for a second. He was sure Jiangshan was just pretending. Jiangshan lifted his hand, looking like a total beginner at the table. He glanced at the dealer, clearly new to the game, and tried to figure things out. He thought if someone had really good cards, it made sense to bet bigger. The dealer paused for a second, caught off guard, before giving a small, uneasy smile. He didn't really know what else to say, so he just went along with it. The big guy with long hair paused, looking totally confused, then gave up. The dealer glanced around the table, making it official that the pot belonged to the young guy. He motioned for everyone to show their cards before the next round started. Jiangshan looked at his cards and quietly turned them over, not showing any emotion. Both guys just stopped in their tracks. Super strong? Seriously? The guy's hand wasn't even that impressive. Definitely smaller than his own. He figured it was probably just a flush or something like that. Turns out, they totally got played. The guys at the table wanted another shot, but Jiangshan just scooped up his chips, grinning to himself. He was ready to move on to the next table. He knew his move wouldn't fool anyone twice. The bunny girl looked up and her eyes went wide when she spotted him coming back, arms loaded with his winnings. She couldn't help but notice how good he looked, and it was clear she was impressed by how much he'd already scored. Tonight really seemed to be his night. Jiangshan kept his cool, acting like luck was on his side. He joked about buying a drink, but then quickly brushed it off, reminding everyone that he was still just a student and probably shouldn't be hanging around like that. Ante felt like she'd just been stabbed in the gut. She froze up, not even getting the chance to answer back before Jiangshan jumped in, changing the subject and asking if there were any quicker games to play. She rolled her eyes, but still managed to smile. She seemed like she was trying to act chill, but you could tell she wasn't super impressed. When someone wanted some action, she pointed them toward another spot, almost like she was saying, if you want something wild, go over there. Jiangshan walked up to the dice table, his hands stuffed in his pockets. He glanced around, checking out the crowd and the game in front of him. The noise, the clatter of dice, and everyone's focus made him feel a little tense, but he tried to look chill as he got ready to play. The dealer gave the cup a solid shake. Inside, the dice bounced around, making that sharp, steady sound everyone recognized. Jiangshan closed his eyes and just listened. The sound of the ball changed as it hit the ground, each bounce coming at a different angle. 4, 5, 6 times. The noise was softer than usual, kind of dull. Out of nowhere, his eyes flew open, like something clicked in his mind. He understood what to do now. The last eye settled into place, with 6 of them looking straight down. The dealer looked around the table, giving everyone a heads up that it was time to make their last moves. Nobody could add more chips after this round, so the pressure was on. Each player checked their cards, trying to decide what to do next, while the room felt a bit more tense than before. Jiangshan shoved his whole stack of chips to the center of the table, betting everything at once. The dealer looked surprised, watching as the kid pushed all his chips in again. Lately, it seemed like this guy just couldn't lose. The dice landed on 4, 5, and 6, just like everyone thought they would. That meant a big win. Right away, the crowd went wild. The dealer stared at the table, clearly annoyed. It just didn't make sense. This kid kept winning round after round, and he wasn't even using any tricks or gadgets. Jiangshan leaned back, barely looking interested. He nudged the guys to keep playing, half yawning, clearly tired and ready to call it a day. Winning fast was all he wanted. He just wanted to head home and crash. The dealer clenched his jaw, annoyed. If this kid kept winning at this pace, he'd have to answer to his boss, and that was the last thing he wanted. While Jiang Shan went about his business, someone was keeping an eye on him through the security cameras. Chun Jin-hu sat in the monitoring room, clearly annoyed. He slammed his fist on the table, frustrated with what was happening on the screen. It seemed like someone out there didn't know when to quit, acting like the place was just a free-for-all. Jin-hu watched closely, his patience running thin. He looked over at his guy and signaled for him to bring the Japanese chicken right away. Jiang Shan sat at the table, totally in the zone. His stack of chips kept getting bigger, almost looking like a small mountain in front of him. Every hand seemed to go his way, and the other players were starting to notice. Everyone nearby stared at him, totally impressed. No one could believe how much money he'd just won, millions, right there in front of them. Some of the guys started to wonder if he was just insanely lucky or maybe something even crazier, like he had some secret skill no one else knew about. Some guys nearby started murmuring, saying he looked like he had nothing left in him. They figured the boss would snap soon and might even get rid of him just to cover the debt. Right then, the casino's inner door burst open. 2 huge guards led a woman out. She moved smoothly, totally chill, but there was something about her that made everyone tense up, like she was dangerous without even trying. The girl moved forward, her eyes locked on the dealer. She didn't hesitate or waste any time. Taking control, she made it clear she was in charge now, ready to deal with whatever was coming next. She glanced across the table at Jiang Shan, her eyes sizing him up. Jiang Shan stopped for a moment. He thought he had seen her somewhere before. The manager raised his voice so everyone could hear, letting the whole place know that, starting now, Ms. Nozama Chizuru was going to be the one taking care of their guest. Jiang Shan felt his heart jolt. Nozama Chizuru's name flashed through his mind. She was supposed to be off in the Golden Triangle right now. Chizuru tapped her fingers along the edge of the dice cup, her expression cold and serious. She waited for him to make his move, looking like she was ready to handle things herself. The truth was, these two had actually crossed paths a long time ago. On May 17, he found himself in Shibuya, Tokyo. At night, Shibuya was wild. The streets were packed, cars and bikes weaving through the crowds and music blasting from every direction. Neon lights flickered over everyone's faces, making the whole place feel like it never slept. Even with all the noise and madness, something about it made people feel awake, like anything could happen. Even with everything going wild, there was something weirdly cool about the whole scene. Jiang Shan shut his eyes for a second, letting the heat of his drink sink in. Chizuru moved in close, her face just inches from his. She told Mr. Jiang not to look away, noticing how intense his eyes were, sharp and focused, almost wild. That cold, steady look caught her attention, and she wanted him to keep his eyes on her. Jiang Shan thought back to that night. Chizuru had an edge to her, kind of like a cat that you shouldn't mess with. She thought about how cats never really care about what you're hiding. All they want is for you to feel a little better, at least for a while. Sometimes, just having one around makes the night less lonely. She was a little buzzed, her voice low and smooth. She told him that if he really wanted to hear what the dice had to say, he needed to pay attention to the way the cup moved in his hands. He could pick up on even the smallest movements in his opponent's muscles. Right then, his heartbeat thumped in his chest, steady and real. The memory broke apart when the sound of dice snapping together pulled him out of it. Chizuru was already there, giving them a shake. Jiang Shan shuts his eyes and really focuses, trying to catch every sound around him. He noticed everything about her, the way her neck tightened, the way her clothes moved when she shifted, even the steady beat in her wrist. It all stood out to him, almost like time had slowed down. She paused and set the dice down, moving her hand smoothly. That was his cue. It was time for him to place his bet. Jiang Shan Grint stared at his cards, his heart beating a little faster. He pushed his chips forward, going all in. He had triple threes, not the strongest hand, but he was ready to risk it. Chizuru stopped cold. Someone just went all in on a triple play. That shouldn't even be possible. He couldn't figure out how the other guy could have seen it coming. Jiang Shan kept his cool and signaled for Ms. Nozama to continue. He wanted her to open it, watching her every move but not showing any nerves. She pressed her lips together and slowly picked up the cup. 3 cards sat on the table, each one a 3. The casino suddenly went quiet. Even with so many people packed inside, it was strangely still, almost like time had stopped for a second. The manager's face went pale as he tried to process the numbers. 5 million, then double that. The realization hit him hard, and he couldn't hide how rattled he was. It was clear the company was losing a ton of money, and he was starting to panic. Chun Jin-hu stood in the monitoring room, his fists clenched tight and eyes narrowed in frustration. Someone was clearly messing with his plans, and he was determined to find out who it was. He wasn't the type to just let things slide. He looked around, already thinking about how he'd catch the guy behind all this. One of the boss's guys rushed in, out of breath. He had just seen something wild. The student who bought out the boss's bar was here. He couldn't believe what just happened. The guy actually bought his bar and took all his money, like he'd completely lost it. He spotted a bow lying nearby, which caught him off guard for a second. Without wasting any time, he grabbed his blades and followed, determined to get to the bottom of this, even if it meant digging into the past. Zhongshan headed over to the counter to pay, phone already in his hand. As he finished up, he started calling Dingji, ready to let him know it was his turn. Chun Jin-hu burst into the room with his crew right behind him. His eyes locked onto the guy who'd messed up his place, and it was obvious he wasn't about to let things slide. The tension in the air got heavier, and everyone could tell things were about to get serious. He lifted the machete high above his head and let out a loud yell, his whole body tense. Suddenly, the lights just went out. The whole place was swallowed by darkness. As soon as the lights flickered back on, everyone saw Chun Jin-hu lying on the ground. Blood was running down from his forehead, making it clear something serious had just happened. Zhongshan snatched up the duffel bag packed with cash and took off toward the back exit. His hands still tingled from how rough that last guy's skin had felt. He glanced over his shoulder, wondering if Donjie was still stuck in the control room, hoping his friend was ready to move. Right then, a smooth voice called out from behind him, clearly searching for someone good-looking. The bunny girl from earlier showed up again, but this time she wasn't alone. She had a whole crew of tough-looking guys with her, all backing her up as she walked out from the darkness. She stared him down, her eyes icy and sharp. It was obvious she wasn't in the mood to mess around, and everyone could tell she meant business. Jiangshan didn't let her finish what she was saying. He just cut her off, asking Annie to move so he could go home. The bunny girl lost it. Her patience was gone, and she was done playing nice. She didn't want anyone calling her Andy, and hearing it just set her off even more. She snapped at the security guys, making it clear she wanted them to grab the guy who tried to mess with the casino. In this place, nobody gets away with taking the house's cash, and she wanted every last chip brought back. The guy stood his ground, facing off with the thug. The threat was clear: give up what they wanted, or get beat up and deal with the bruises later. The thug didn't care about anyone's looks and made it obvious he wouldn't feel bad if things got ugly. Jiangshan's stomach tightened. This was definitely not how he wanted things to go. Messing things up with the girls here was the last thing on his mind. The bunny girl stared him down, her eyes sharp and unblinking. It was clear she wasn't just standing up for herself. She was making it known that messing with her meant messing with Tiger too. Jiangshan just shrugged, totally unfazed. Rabbits helping out the tiger? Whatever. To him, it was just a few more minor problems to deal with. As the platform trembled beneath their feet, the two figures stared wide-eyed at the swirling azure tier ripping open the sky above the assembled soldiers and ships. A startled voice broke through the tense air, insisting with rising panic that only an immortal emperor could force such a gate, and questioning, breathlessly, how such unimaginable power could manifest within this sealed realm. Hovering before pale, ghostly chariots, the old woman wore a triumphant smile, her pride unmistakable. She murmured that Luo Dong may have seized Xiaomeng Qian's 9-yin spirit body to step into the realm of immortal emperor, convinced destiny still walked hand in hand with the Luo clan. Suspended above a shattered, glowing battlefield alive with crackling mystic currents, the MC and princess hovered shoulder to shoulder. Their expressions remained calm yet resolute as they summoned overwhelming power, twin pillars of strength holding steady within the storm. Jaw clenched in rage, the matriarch snapped that the Jiang family's reckless arrival inside the secret realm was a blatant insult to the Luo clan, as if their name and power meant nothing at all. The two locked eyes, resolve burning between them. "Are you ready?" one asked. The other answered with a confident nod, promising that everything could be entrusted to her. In that brief moment, a silent pact was forged. They would face the coming storm together. With unwavering resolve blazing in her eyes, the young woman lifted her radiant hand, light spilling across the battlefield. Her voice rang with royal authority as she commanded the soldiers of the great Xia divine dynasty to obey her call and prepare to stand firm. Mist curled over the wooden dock as tension snapped into panic. One armored soldier barked for an immediate retreat, urgency sharp in his voice, while his startled companion spun toward him in disbelief, struggling to grasp the sudden shift in command. A tense general stepped forward, voice trembling as he demanded to know whether Jiang had forced the princess into compliance. But she met his panic with serene composure, assuring him that the command to protect their people was hers alone, calming the storm in his heart. A young soldier stepped forward, jaw tight and eyes sharp with doubt. He challenged the notion of safety, insisting bitterly that true protection would only be tested when the Luo clan descended upon them, hinting that fate had not yet revealed its cruelty. Amid drifting clouds and silent warships suspended in the heavens, the woman stood poised at her vessel's bow. Serenity cloaked her features, yet a quiet spark of curiosity lit her eyes as a horse-drawn sky carriage glided toward her like a dream carved from legend. Her eyes burned with venom as she stepped forward, voice trembling with simmering rage. She warned her enemy that his desperate attempt to shield the princess would do nothing to save him now. No ally, no power, no miracle could spare him after defying the Luo clan and trespassing into the secret realm. At the shadowed forest's edge, he watched the floating carriages glide closer, suspicion sharpening his gaze. Only the Luo clan, he muttered, could weave such schemes from arrogance and deceit. Yet, despite every warning whispering in his mind, turning away was impossible. The path forward had already been chosen. Beneath rolling clouds and thunder's breath, she lifted her hand, fury sparking like lightning in her eyes. Her command struck the air like a blade: slay the boy, and let no one call upon great Xia for aid. To her he was but a child, unworthy of armies or alliances. Yet her trembling rage betrayed how dangerous she believed him to be. The ranks roared with battle hunger as weapons lifted and armor clanged, a tide of fervor rising beneath the blazing portal. Then a voice cut through the thunder, victorious, exultant, electrifying the air as the MC and princess hovered above like destined champions, their presence igniting the army's faith. Standing firm before the looming clan, he raised his voice with steady conviction. If they sought vengeance, let it fall on him alone, but spare his allies, spare the innocents of great Xia. His gaze held steel. If sacrifice was the price, he would bear it without hesitation. Rage twisted her features as she thrust her fist forward, power crackling like lightning across the storm-filled sky. With a vicious snarl, she declared the girl's words her final mistake, and the strike detonated with terrifying force, hurling the wounded girl through the churning clouds, blood trailing like falling petals. Panic threat, her voice as she cried for retreat, urgency sharp enough to cut through the chaos. With one ally at her side, she darted toward the glowing gateway, desperate to escape. Behind them, the MC stood unflinching like an anchor in the storm, while the princess's gaze wavered with worry, torn between duty and fear. Arms folded and gaze sharp as a blade, she faced him with chilling certainty. Even with great Xia's fresh-forged generals at his back, she proclaimed, he was nothing before her cultivation. Yet a sliver of mercy flickered. Conditional, cruel, if he surrendered Luo Dong's whereabouts before fate carved its answer into his bones. A smirk curled across his face as he lifted the glowing pouch, its light casting sharp edges across his features. Your prodigy? He taunted, voice slick with mockery. If he's truly in here, maybe you'll find what's left. Come claim him yourselves. The words cracked like thunder, humiliation sharpened to a weapon. Her fury erupted like wildfire as she clenched her fist and roared for her forces to strike as one. Across the battlefield, she proclaimed her vow to grind the boy's bones to dust beneath her wrath. He and the princess hovered in the air, silent and steady, wariness and unbroken resolve painted across their faces. Under a storm-dark sky, glowing power gathered in his hands as he warned them they only had the time of one incense stick left. The princess didn't flinch. She held that incense steady, face set like she already knew the end was coming. The matriarch surged forward in fury, her voice cracking with murderous intent as she demanded the master's downfall. In response, the protagonist tightened his grip around a radiant artifact, its light pulsing like a heartbeat of war. Muscles tensed, eyes unwavering, he braced for the explosive collision of power that loomed only breaths away. Her white hair danced in the rising energy as she lifted her finger, voice steady and sharp as steel. Sacred syllables spilled from her lips in a resonant incantation, and the ancient spirit-sealing array roared to life. The luminous pyramid obeyed her command, locking its celestial light into place like a divine cage descending from heaven. Chains hung in silent witness as the boys stood amidst them, back straight, eyes fierce with purpose. Mystic light pulsed around him, steady, unstoppable, each breath fueling the power gathering at his core. Determination poured from him like heat from a rising star. Fear carved itself into her features as she staggered back, the truth crashing into her like divine thunder. Her voice trembled as she cried out, realizing the formation before her pulsed with the unimaginable might of a true saint power far beyond her command or preparation. He stepped forward, eyes sharp with confidence, and called out the Luo clan, daring them to come at him. Energy flared around his hands as he braced to strike, a threat and a promise in one breath. Flames roared around him like a living beast, casting his figure in burning gold. Standing unshaken, fists clenched and lifted, he hurled a challenge across the battlefield, not to one opponent, but to them all. His stance spoke of iron will, his voice of unshakable defiance. Come face me together if you dare. Shadows clung to him like armor, his stare cutting through the darkness with lethal focus. Anger laced every word as he stepped forward, demanding to know what kind of fool dared act with such arrogance. The air thickened, a quiet storm waiting to break. Tension snapped like lightning, and he launched forward, planting himself between enemy and target. His voice rang clear with fierce conviction. If they wished to advance, they would face him first. No hesitation, no retreat. He was the wall, and he would not break. The world held its breath as two figures sprang forward, fury and resolve colliding mid-air. One roared a venom-laced insult as he swung, rage burning through every muscle. The other answered without words, stepping into the strike with unwavering steel in his gaze. The clash felt destined, the spark before an inferno. His command cut through the room like steel, and the subordinates faltered, trading uneasy glances before stepping toward the trembling woman. Doubt flickered in their eyes as he repeated the order. Any means necessary. Fear rippled through the space, and the air thickened with dread as they closed in on her. Her pleas trembled through the silence, fragile and desperate, while the three men stood over her like unmoving statues. Their faces held no mercy, only duty twisted by fear. As she begged the manager to stop, dread tightened around her like iron chains, her terror rising with every heartbeat. Beyond the rooftop's edge, the city stretched endlessly, bathed in quiet shadow and cold neon glow. Towers stood like silent watchmen, gazing over empty streets, and the night held a hushed anticipation, as though the world waited for something sharp and unstoppable to strike the darkness. The clock chimed softly, echoing through quiet halls, and the classroom settled into stillness. With practiced calm, the teacher's voice floated over the students, guiding them to page 17 and the first question, a simple command that reset the rhythm of the room, drawing restless minds back into order. Between piles of books and messy desks, two exhausted students kept studying. One finally snapped, waving at the problem. If A is parallel to B, then none of this makes sense anymore, he muttered, completely drained. He hovered over the worn map, marking fresh positions with deliberate care. Each stroke measured and exact. Opportunities sprawled before him like tempting stars, yet he forced his breathing steady, reminding himself that power came not just from ambition, but from restraint. One wrong move could cost everything. His fingers tightened around the pen, knuckles pale beneath the strain. A quiet decision settled over him, bitter yet sharp with clarity. To survive the storm he sensed approaching, he would need to pull back now, withdraw before chaos crashed down and swallowed everything. Silence stretched, heavy, electric, suffocating. His gaze locked onto his companions ahead, their silhouettes framed by the harsh red gleam bleeding into the air. Muscles tensed, shoulders squared. Each breath carried the weight of an inevitable clash waiting just beyond the darkened edge. Confusion clouded Jiang Shan's eyes. His brows knit tight as the question on the page warred with the thoughts frantically spinning in his mind. The classroom felt frozen. Pencils stilled, breath hushed, suspended between silent panic and stunned disbelief as he struggled to make sense of anything at all. His voice tore through the stagnant quiet, frustration sharpened to a blade. Anger flared as he lashed out, accusing the absent student of hopelessness, demanding to know whether there was any genuine will to rise, or only hollow excuses echoing in wasted time. He nearly dropped the stack of books, blurting quickly that he'd been listening. Bananas were the topic, right? His forced confidence crumbled under the pressure, written plainly across his stressed face. The teacher's sharp voice cracked through the classroom, echoing with finality. His stomach dropped as reality struck. Extra lessons, starting today. The weight of failure pressed cold against him, dread settling like iron as the room seemed to close in around his tightening breath. His gaze snapped to the snoring boy slumped over a tower of books, still muttering in half-dreams. With a flare of irritation, he pointed sharply, voice rising as he demanded to know why he was being punished while this shameless sleeper escaped untouched, sprawled in peaceful defiance. Half awake and slurring his words, he muttered something about lines and planes converging, his thoughts dissolving faster than he could speak them. Sleep pulled him down like a tide, dragging logic and dignity along with it. The boy's silence lingered like a stone, unyielding and cold. Shock flickered across the MC's expression, disbelief thickening the air between them. Night wrapped around them, charged and motionless, as if waiting for the next spark to strike. They walked in a slow march beneath the dying sun, long shadows trailing like ghosts of their steps. At the forefront, the boy pushed open the creaking door, and the others paused behind him, breath held in hushed excitement, as though crossing a threshold into something new, uncertain, and hopeful. Jiangshan paused at the doorway, one foot hovering in uncertainty as her gaze sharpened. Suspicion carved across her features as she studied his uneasy stance, voice cool as she called out his lateness. A test wrapped in a simple question, the air suddenly charged around them. His expression remained sour, frustration clinging stubbornly to his features. Under his breath, he grumbled about rigid rules and mandatory tutoring, each obligation stacking like bricks on his shoulders, the world suddenly feeling too structured, too heavy, too demanding. From the dimness she stepped nearer, soft light brushing her features, hair casting gentle shadows across her calm expression. Her voice fell quiet but firm as she reminded him that discipline breeds success, that building good habits now would shape his path forward, a gentle truth delivered with steady grace. Rather than falter, she lifted her chin higher, confidence sharpening like steel beneath silk. With cool determination, she declared that nothing stood between her and the person she intended to become. Her stance radiated challenge, as though daring the world itself to try and stand in her way. She stood calm and confident, and he looked up with a friendly grin, surprised they were both there for tutoring. With a composed smile, she corrected him. She wasn't a student at all, but the teacher, instantly shifting the dynamic between them. Under the bright clinical lights, tension tightened like drawn wire. With a challenging stare and defiant tone, he countered sharply, insisting that if they were equals, neither had the right to command the other, his pride refusing to bow even for a heartbeat. Her confident smile only sharpened, and his composure wavered. Anxiety twisted in his chest as he struggled to fathom how someone so effortlessly assured could already stand so far ahead. His thoughts raced, realization dawning. The world he had stepped into was filled with opponents far more formidable than he imagined. He steadied himself and stepped forward with new confidence. Her presence didn't shake him. It motivated him, pushing him to enter boldly, every step strong and sure. Her determined words lingered in the air, and he felt a twist of unease. The room fell quiet, tension settling between them like a held breath. Even after she finished speaking, she kept her calm stare locked on him. She didn't need to repeat herself. Her look alone made it obvious she expected Jiang Shan to step up. The determined girl gripped his tie, her voice ringing out as he called to his classmate Jiang. Her eyes unwavering as she confessed that her reason for coming was solely because of him. She pulled his tie, making him fall towards her, the tension escalating as she remained calm and offered only a slight, knowing smile. Then, keeping her composure, the girl leaned even closer to his ear and whispered with a commanding tone that he should listen to his teacher, intensifying his discomfort as anxiety flickered across his face. Noticing the vivid flush on his ears, she seized his tie with a playful grin, teasing that his embarrassment had become all too obvious as he looked down, unable to meet her gaze. Then, as her teasing words lingered in the air, his cheeks deepened in color while she chuckled softly, delighted to have drawn out a hidden side of him he rarely allowed anyone to see. Startled by her pointed question, he scrambled to collect himself, embarrassment coloring his face as she watched with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. Then, maintaining her confident grip on the tie, she challenged him to calculate her pulling force, explaining that it would be determined by his weight, the friction between them, and the strength of his resistance. At his suggestion, she nodded with quiet determination, turning away as he braced himself for the lesson, the tension between their contrasting demeanors filling the space with anticipation. Responding to his silent encouragement, she pressed chalk to the board, each careful stroke revealing his focused determination as the lesson quietly began to take shape. Then, as the chalk dust settled, the girl shifted her attention to a small piece of broken pencil, curiosity flickering in her gaze while the boy remained seated with his back turned, distant and unmoved by her discovery. Moments later, she wrote out the math problem with assured strokes and invited Jiang Shan to attempt solving for its domain, her encouraging tone filling the quiet room. His irritation sharpened as she remained silent, prompting him to question whether she ever studied and pressing her for an answer about the concept of a domain. Then, the seriousness in his eyes deepened as he silently contemplated that all his efforts and knowledge now felt like echoes from a life long gone. The boy, still seated, looked up in curiosity as her urgent entrance filled the room with tension, her disbelief lingering between them like an unspoken challenge. Maintaining her focus, she continued to explain from just inches away, while his discomfort grew and he politely requested that she keep a little distance. Then, closing the distance between them, she reached out with a gentle touch and suggested she could use her hairpin to keep his bangs from blocking his vision, her caring tone easing the lingering tension. Without warning, her gentle touch shifted to a determined grip as she clamped onto his arm, overriding his flustered refusal and announcing with sharp resolve that they should skip any further talk and start the lesson, leaving him wide-eyed at her unexpected enthusiasm. That defiant declaration crackled between them, his eyes burning with furious certainty as he challenged anyone to doubt the breadth of his past trials. Amused by her own confession, she tossed her hair and let a sly smirk linger, the air thick with unspoken challenge as her boldness met his simmering defiance. As the last rays of sunset painted the quiet schoolyard and the clock tower stood watch, a sense of calm relief settled over everything, marking the end of a long-awaited event. Then, as Zhongshan focused on retrieving his book, he heard the girl's gentle yet firm reminder echoing her concern that he not forget to review what they had learned. In response, the girl's mischievous smile widened as she threatened to give him special guidance, causing the boy to nervously back away with his bag and hastily insist that she stay away from him. The late sunlight lingered as she studied his composure, her concern about the heat softening when he replied that he truly wasn't bothered, leaving the warm silence to settle between them. Then, as her words hung in the air, his pace slowed and he responded with a questioning look, sensing her anxious need to reach out. Bathed in the warm glow of sunset, the boy's worried expression deepened as the girl's hesitant question about his feelings left the air heavy, and he immediately reassured her, his voice trembling with earnest denial. Then, as the boy hesitated with his back still turned, the girl's voice grew softer yet more insistent, asking if there was truly nothing more between them, her hope shining through her uncertainty. In the golden light by the fence, her words finally broke the silence as she admitted, with a nervous determination, that she liked him, leaving him momentarily stunned beneath the weight of her confession. As the confession lingered in the air, her grip tightened on the school bag while she anxiously watched his reaction, the tender vulnerability of her words echoing between them. Then, bathed in the soft glow of a pink backdrop, the earnest protagonist fixed his gaze forward, revealing with quiet determination how desperately he had tried to capture their attention. Moments later, her gentle blush deepened as she continued to contemplate her own sincerity, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. The boy watched her uncertainty, the golden light of sunset deepening the seriousness between them as she finally raised her eyes and asked what his feelings were, her voice carrying a quiet urgency. His silence lingered in the charged air, heightening her vulnerability as she searched his eyes for the answer her heart desperately needed. His face tightened with regret as he looked down, his voice trembling with an apology to Lin Shi while sweat beaded along his brow. As the last rays of sunlight grazed the fence, she holds her ground, explaining that although their journeys once intertwined, she refuses to let him be pulled down by the consequences of her decisions. Moments later, her school bag bouncing against her side, she quickened her pace through the golden light, repeating her promise to support him as Zhongshan strode ahead in silence. Inside that lone illuminated room, unseen figures moved behind the curtains, their silhouettes hinting at secretive conversations unfolding beneath the quiet, watchful night. As the crimson liquid caught the light, he paused mid-toast, his respectful tone carrying a sense of anticipation as he called to Uncle Hu. Then, as the glass lingered in his hand, the subordinate confessed his failure with a trembling apology, prompting Chen's cold disappointment to deepen in the dimly lit cellar. Swirling the red wine thoughtfully, he stated that those buildings were vital for storing the goods and stressed how highly his father regarded them. Seizing on the tension left in the air, young Master Chen regarded the man's desperate posture in silence, the weight of judgment settling heavily as the plea for mercy hung unresolved between them. Then, with the glass of wine poised between them, he calmly explained that an opportunity would be granted, but only if the anxious man kept in mind what was required. In response, he let go of the wine glass with a smirk on his face, his raised hand casting an almost hypnotic spell over the glass. The threat hung heavily in the air as the man tightened his grip and warned with icy menace that the next mistake would see the other's fate sealed, just like the shattered wineglass moments before. Then, following the warning's chilling weight, the man in white dismissed the subordinate with a sharp command to clean up, and the relieved servant quickly expressed his gratitude before rushing to comply. As the stillness deepened, he studied the glass in his hand, his pensive gaze lingering on the emptiness as if searching for answers within its fragile clarity. The glass caught the light as he leaned back further, his lips curling into a smug smile, while he mused aloud that a nameless brat daring to defy the Chen family was both an affront and an entertaining diversion. Under the sickly orange haze of the streetlights, a black car hurtled down the lonely road, its tires shrieking against the pavement. Inside, a pale-faced man clutched the seat in panic, his voice trembling as he begged Lord Hu to slow down, fear and urgency colliding in the confined space. The car skidded to a stop, gravel spraying as the door swung open. Two men scrambled out, easing the injured passenger to his feet. He clutched his crutches, wincing sharply, and muttered through clenched teeth for them to be careful. His foot, he reminded them, hadn't yet healed. His patience finally snapped. Eyes blazing, the injured man turned on the boy, his voice cracking through the air like a whip. The harsh warning made the boy stumble a step back, unease spilling into the dark corners of the alley where even the air seemed to flinch. His patience finally snapped. Eyes blazing, the injured man turned on the boy, his voice cracking through the air like a whip. The harsh warning made the boy stumble a step back, unease spilling into the dark corners of the alley where even the air seemed to flinch. The question lingered, heavy and biting, before the patch beneath his palm ignited with a harsh white glow. The light washed over his stern face, carving shadows of authority and frustration as he declared coldly that their worth was slipping away. The MC pressed his headphones tighter, each muffled word from the conversation feeding the storm behind his eyes, his breath shallow as tension clawed at the silence. A drop of sweat slid down his temple as the voice in his ear sharpened, accusing him of diving in blind. The words hit harder than expected, stirring panic that twisted tighter in his gut, each syllable reminding him of the danger closing in. The soft light flickered across the crowd, catching on polished glasses and restless eyes before settling on one figure. Chen Yu stepped forward, his name rolling through the air, the only son of the Chen family, a title that instantly darkened the mood with quiet, unspoken pressure. The pale light from the monitor carved hard lines across his face. Jaw tight, eyes narrowed, he muttered a sharp curse under his breath, the static in his headphones echoing his rising fury. His grip tightened until his knuckles paled, every nerve alive with adrenaline. Taking a measured step forward, he lifted his head and shouted with conviction. His search, his endless pursuit through chaos and shadow had finally come to an end. Fueled by a sudden, explosive surge of rage, he hurled himself forward through the maze of overturned boxes and flickering shadows. The swivel chair spun helplessly in his wake as his voice split the silence, a thunderous vow that vengeance would no longer wait. As the rush of adrenaline drained away, he sagged forward, breath uneven and chest heaving. Sweat traced down his temple as he bit his lip, the metallic taste anchoring him in the moment, the reminder that patience, not fury, was the blade he needed to wield. His hands quivered despite every effort to still them. Each slow, uneven breath fogged the air before him, a fragile wall between composure and the chaos clawing to escape. In the dim light, his silence spoke louder than any scream. The red gleam in his eyes burned steady, the reflection of something newly forged within. Determination thickened into steel, the chaos of emotion tempered by purpose as his vow carved its mark into the silence surrounding him. For a long moment, he just stared, then, in a low murmur, admitted the truth to himself. This was it, the first step toward the life he'd been chasing in the dark. His eyes burned like twin embers, the glow of a silent promise flickering behind them. He knew that timing would decide everything, that the Chen family's downfall would come, not from rage, but from precision, delivered in a single, merciless strike when fate aligned. At dawn, the world trembled with each gunshot. The sharp reports echoed across the range, each burst of flame from the muzzle, a symbol of intent, every bullet one step closer to the ruthless dream that drove him beyond fear. Beneath the endless blue, he raised the gun with steady hands. The world seemed to still as his eyes blazed with purpose, and when he pulled the trigger, the echo of the shot split the silence like a declaration of will to the heavens. As the sound of the gunfire faded into the wind, the staff officer let out a low whistle, admiration flickering in his eyes. "That kid's stance," he murmured, "puts even my men to shame." His colleague bristled instantly, scoffing that comparing trained soldiers to a student was both unfair and absurd. A hush swept the room before the instructor's voice broke it, tinged with disbelief and awe. "Every bullet," he said slowly, "through the same hole." The crowd stirred, eyes wide, as they stared at the target proof of skill so flawless it silenced even doubt. The boy still trembled with the echo of his own perfection, breath shallow as the officers exchanged knowing looks. One man, half smiling in disbelief, broke the silence. Kid, with aim like that, did you run away from special forces? Laughter rippled through the range, but beneath it lingered awe too sharp to disguise. The air turned sharp as the veteran's voice sliced through the praise. A carnival trick, he spat, arms crossed, eyes burning with scorn. Anyone can hit a still target with a tuned rifle. Across the room, the boy stood unmoved, calm, quiet, the storm breaking around his silence. With a sly grin, the boy flicked a shell casing into the air, its metallic ring echoing like a dare. Let's make it interesting, he said. The soldier's jaw tightened, rage flashing in his eyes as he snapped. Who are you calling defiant, brat? The tension sparked like gunpowder waiting for flame. Under his breath, the veteran scoffed, voice laced with disbelief. Shooting a shell casing! What arrogance! His hand flexed on the rifle, torn between ridicule and the faint unease that, maybe, just maybe, the boy could pull it off. He steadied his aim, pulled the trigger, and said under his breath, "This is the one." The shot thundered, marking the make-or-break moment. He steadied his grip and fired, jaw tightening. "This is it," he muttered as the bullet tore free, the echo marking the line between failure and victory. The air trembled beneath the weight of his stare, those crimson eyes narrowing with such focused fury that even the silence seemed to burn. Determination rolled off him in waves, each heartbeat striking like flint on steel. He lifted the weapon with slow precision, the barrel gleaming as it caught the fading light. His stance was unshakable, breath measured, every ounce of determination gathering beneath the vast, tense sky that mirrored his defiance. The gun kicked, muzzle flash blinding. His expression stayed hard as the bullet rocketed into the blue, leaving a shimmering trail that made the moment feel electric. The impact bloomed in a burst of flame, sparks scattering like wild stars across the haze. Both soldiers froze, eyes wide, the fiery light dancing across their faces as disbelief rooted them in place. The faint light flickered across the soldier's face as he stepped forward, anger etched into every line. "Luck!" he spat, voice trembling with disbelief. "That's all it was, luck! Drop the act before pride gets you killed." His words cut through the smoky air, but the silence that followed hit harder still. He smirked, eyes narrowing. "Still think it was luck?" he said coolly. "Fine, how about I do it again, eyes closed this time." The tension snapped into stunned silence. A soldier stepped up, grinning ear to ear. "I don't care what anyone says, this kid's a natural-born prodigy," he shouted, jostling his comrade in the excitement. "You're telling me you've never practiced before?" The disbelief was almost comical. His grin lingered, but it faltered under the weight of thought. The thrill that had rushed through him moments ago now felt distant, tainted by something hollow. Maybe, he mused silently, it wasn't about victory at all, but the joy he'd left behind chasing it. The officer grinned, patting his partner's arm. "Not bad, we should bring our guys here sometime," he joked. The younger one froze up, blinking in disbelief before blurting, "Wait, staff officer it actually worked?" Silence weighed heavily between them until the young man finally drew a steady breath. His composure sharpened, voice calm but resolute as he admitted, "I didn't come here to boast. I came because I need your help." The words lingered, carrying a gravity that cut through the stillness. The older man's eyes softened with respect as he listened, nodding slowly. "You have heart," he said. "Within the limits of what's right, I'll back you." His tone carried the weight of experience as the younger man outlined his vision. A security company born not of greed, but purpose. The weapon at his hip caught the light, gleaming like a symbol of intent. "I want veterans," he said evenly, "men who know the weight of battle." Across from him, the officer's eyes narrowed, silent, thoughtful, measuring both the man and the conviction burning behind his words. His stare hardened. "I want to build a place where soldiers can work with pride again," he said. "Fair pay, real purpose, no more being tossed aside when the fight's over." He looked past the room, gaze distant but voice steady. "Men who, given everything, shouldn't have to vanish into the dirt," he said quietly. "They carried the world once. It's time the world carried them back." He straightened, conviction anchoring his words. "Together, we can do more than guard our people," he said, hand resting on the gun like a promise. "We can tear out the rot hiding beneath their peace, the corruption that feeds on what's good." The quiet hum of authority filled the room as his vision crystallized. The officer's grin faded, replaced by a thoughtful stillness. For the first time, the hard edge in his eyes eased, revealing something faint respect, maybe even belief. "You've got guts," he murmured, the hint of a smile tugging at his lip. "Don't waste it." The young man met that look without hesitation. chin lifting, shoulders squared. Confidence radiated off him like heat. "Just tell me what to do," his eyes seemed to say. The moment hung suspended, charged with expectation. He nodded once, voice firm. "If this is going to work, I need a solid team, people I can count on, no matter what." His tone left no room for doubt. He remained composed, though the request carried a quiet weight. "There's one more thing," he said evenly. "I'll need your backing for the official clearances. Without that, none of this gets off the ground." His gaze held steady, firm, respectful, but resolute. The young recruit leaned forward, eyes fixed on every word as the officer's pen scratched steadily across the notepad. "I'll handle the qualifications myself," the man said firmly, "and I'll send you everything you need on the Veterans Contact Station." Each word carried the authority of a promise carved in steel. Under the clear sky, the paper passed between their hands, a quiet symbol of trust. The officer gave a curt nod, his voice carrying both pride and approval. "You've done well," he said. The recruit bowed slightly, gratitude and determination shining through his calm. "Thank you, sir." The mentor's smile deepened as he reached out, hand firm on the young man's shoulder before pulling back for a fist bump. "It's your time," he said, the warmth in his tone edged with pride. "Go out there and make them remember your name." The moment hung suspended between duty and legacy. He clenched his jaw, eyes narrowing. The name Chen Yu stuck in his head like a challenge, pushing him forward. "Fine," he muttered. "Then I'll be ready." His focus hardened, sharp as steel. A grim smile crossed his face as realization settled in. "So it begins," he whispered to himself. The night around him felt heavier, darker, as if the world itself knew the nightmare he'd just chosen to face.
Lately, I've had a strong addiction to watching manhwa and manga recap videos. Every single day, I find myself binging one after another, losing hours and days doing absolutely nothing productive. And honestly, it's getting out of hand. So, maybe we can make these viral videos too. I mean, look at the views, the growth, the community these creators are building. It looks simple, right? But that's a trap. You go down this endless rabbit hole, spending money, losing sleep, hiring editors and writers from Fiverr and Upwork, and still feel like you've been robbed. Because don't forget how emotional the YouTube algorithm can be with making videos go viral. It's unpredictable, especially when the market's saturated, competition's relentless, and somehow other creators are dropping 10-hour videos daily while you're stuck trying to finish one. That's when I realized something had to change. So, I built the solution, the Web2 Narrative Suite, a complete one-click system that handles everything from cropping, script narration, text-to-speech, image processing, and full video generation in one smooth process. Save money, reduce hours of work, and have a tool that only gives you straight results. Click on the link down below and experience it for yourself. And if you want even more tools to supercharge your YouTube recap journey, visit my Ko-Fi and Patreon pages where I drop weekly new tools designed to keep you ahead as AI continues to steal our jobs. So tap in now before you get left behind.